when did we start this? We started this in like March of 2013. Is that right? So it's been like 8 years that we've been doing this, and we're still doing all this bullshit trying to get it to work. Oh God!
Usually, it's only one of you that radically changes your setup and has things. But now Marco wanted to get in on the action today too.
It's not always me. I rarely mess with my setup. Marco's the one that changes computers like underwear.
Yep, that's me.
How many computers have you bought in the last 3 weeks?
Kept?
Bought. I didn't say kept. I said bought.
Well, for my household or for me personally?
For your household.
He fosters computers a lot. Like, and then basically, like when he has a foster fail, that's how he gets his computers.
Oh God!
Marco is about 15 dogs and 35 computers, all foster fails. Oh golly!
All right, my office is a mess.
Of the 32 minutes and 7 seconds we've been recording, do you think we have 6 minutes of content at this point?
This is all for the bootleg. They need to get their money's worth.
Oh my God! All right.
Holy smokes!
I've been doing computer setup stuff for the better part of the last week. For the most part, I am still in like happy mode. For the most part, I'm still loving computers and, new computer setup. I'll get to this in a little bit of like why this has taken me an entire week. Short version is I did 2 clean installs instead of doing any migration. So that it just takes so much time for me to set things up. But I was happy until today because like I had this list of things I had to do, for, set up, my, Backblaze and Dropbox and Time Machine and, all just this list of stuff I wanted to set up on the new computers. And I had saved until today the 2 things I really didn't want to do. That would be Adobe setup and transferring the cellular plan from my old Apple Watch to my new Apple Watch.
Well, that usually isn't bad in my experience.
I have never had that succeed without having to invoke AT&T's chat people.
Huh. I feel like I've done it once or twice.
It's supposed to be able to do it, but it never does. So all this time, I've been thinking, oh God, I got to do this. And I had forgotten about the Adobe thing. I had forgotten because my computer felt great. I had it all set up the way I liked. I really, very happy. Everything's lightweight. I'm using Maestro instead of Dropbox, so I don't have that crap all over the place. And like keeping everything nice and tight and clean and using new modern things. And then I went to record the ads for this podcast, which I do right before we record the podcast. And I don't have Adobe Audition installed, which is what I recorded. And I know there are other programs that are what we used to call a wave editor, like back in the very, very old days. Whatever now we call Adobe Audition, it's a wave editor, but with a bunch more features. But it's the best damn wave editor I've ever seen. And it's like, the modern version of what used to be called Cool Edit Pro, which I think they actually bought and turned into Audition long, long, long ago. I could be wrong about that, but I just love a good wave editor, and I've never found a better one than Audition. And so I tolerate Adobe's massive amount of crap only for 2 apps, only for Photoshop and Audition. I don't use any of their other apps anymore, really. And my God, I must really love Audition to put up with this crap because Photoshop seems to have a lot of really good alternatives. There's Acorn, there's Pixelmator, there's the Affinity suite of stuff. Like there's all sorts of nice alternatives to Photoshop. I don't know of any great alternatives to Adobe Audition. And for what I do with like tons of various, it's basically like it's my sound utility knife. Like I can do tons of different things with sound with Audition. And it's not my only one. I have many sound tools, but this sound is much of my business and pleasure, and so I kind of need it. But oh man, installing Adobe that is a fast way to bring my computer high down, crashing back to earth. Oh my God! First, you got to install Creative Cloud, and there seems to be no way around installing Creative Cloud. Like, if anybody knows of an option for that for Audition, please let me know. But I don't think there is one. Anyway, I did briefly consider pirating my copy of Audition that I pay for anyway, just so I wouldn't have to have Creative Cloud installed on my computer. But I don't know. I don't even know what that world is like anymore. So it's been a while since I've been in it. But anyway, other than Adobe's crap being spewed all over my computer in the worst possible way, other than that, I've had a wonderful week setting up my computers. I haven't gotten any work done because I've been setting up my computers. But I'm so happy to be at the stage I'm at now, which is everything is mostly done and working. But yeah, it's been a road getting here.
To that end, I've decided to completely change up my audio setup for today. And
Great.
I'm doing that because I wanted to trial using my fancy new MacBook Pro, which has finally arrived.
All right.
And I am very excited about it. We will be talking about it quite a bit later. But I am now recording on the MacBook Pro, my poor iMac screen. It's actually a truly stupid procedure that I'm doing right now because I have this beautiful 27-inch screen right behind the 14-inch screen that I'm actively using, and I'm just that 27-inch screen with all that beautiful real estate is just sitting there dark. But nevertheless, I am recording on the MacBook Pro, so if anything sounds funky, don't blame Marco, blame me. But in the process of getting all this squared away, of course, I had to do all my installs, and I'd like to get a reminder out in front of all of the people, including you, Marco, although it's too late. Homebrew Bundle. If you believe in homebrew, which I do, then Bundle is sort of kind of like a gem file, I guess, for homebrew packages. And so I've written about it. We've talked about this on the show before. I've written about it, and I'll put a link in the show notes to my blog post. Well, you can put in a list of all the packages you want. Like, I don't know, if you're Casey, then maybe FFmpeg would be high on the list. And you could put that in your bundle file, and then you say to, Homebrew Bundle, once Homebrew is installed, go install all the things. And there was a couple of minor issues with it this time. Specifically, the mechanism by which you can install stuff from the App Store is kind of broken at the moment, although I think they just merged the fix for it. But nevertheless, I was able to get it squared away, and it is really nice. The one thing I will say, though, is I was sold a bill of goods with this MacBook Pro. I'm kind of spoiling a little bit later, just a smidge. I was sold a bill of goods with this MacBook Pro that everything happens instantly. And a lot of stuff does. A lot of stuff really, really does. But you know what doesn't? Xcode install. And I did it from the Mac App Store, which maybe that was a poor choice. But
well, there's your problem. Never do that.
One way or the other. The install took for freaking ever. And of course, like a noob, I had, the way I did my bundle file, which you can find off the link on my blog, is I did all of the Mac App Store stuff first, and then all the like straight up brew stuff later. And so and I did it alphabetically because I don't know, I'm type A. And so one of the last things in the Mac App Store section was Xcode, but then that caused everything to effectively come to a screeching halt because I couldn't install anything else. I could, but you know what I mean? Like if I'm running through this file, it's held up on Xcode before it gets to any of the other stuff I wanted to install. So one of the things I've learned from this process is put Xcode at the bottom. So it's the very last thing you install, not one of the first. But Homebrew Bundle, I know, Marco, it's too late for you, and I know this isn't really your style because I know you don't like automating anything with these sorts of things, but it's a very neat tool, and we will put links in the show notes.
It isn't that I'm against automating this kind of stuff. It's just that the setup that I have, or the technical needs of whatever I'm installing, or the packages themselves, tend to change more often than I set up new machines. And so the result is when I am ready to use it again, either the script has broken or the packages it refers to have changed or broken, and or the things I want to install are different. And so, I mean, if I was setting up, like, suppose I was ridiculous enough to buy a new Mac every year.
Suppose
that I was setting them up as clean installs every time, then I would be way more likely to do this kind of setup. But what I do now, I set up a clean install maybe every 3 to 5 years. So
yeah, see, that's where you and I differ. So it makes even more sense that you would not be keen on this idea. But for me, I find that for my preferences, I just like doing it fresh every time. I like cleaning out all the cruft, and I know that's more of like a holdover from Windows time, but I just prefer to clean everything out and just do it fresh. John, when you did your Mac Pro, did you migrate? You did, didn't you?
Yep, I always use Migration Assistant. I was just watching it when one of our Slacks people were just talking about Brew and all that other stuff, and I don't know how you people live with these package managers. Like Margaret was saying, I update so infrequently that when I update, it's basically an opportunity for me to either update or change which things I have, right? So that's the time for me to upgrade my installation of Postgres and upgrade my installation of MySQL if it even still exists, or if it's MariaDB now or whatever. Like, that's the time for me to do all that. New version of Perl now and all my cpan modules. Let's get those. I don't mess with those for years, but when a new computer comes, that's the time for me to revisit all of it. So I don't want an automated process that just gives me what I had before. I want every X number of years to reconsider everything that I have. And Migration Assistant brings a lot of it over, and because of the wonders of binary compatibility and or Rosetta, my existing installs tend to just work, but those are just copied as files because everything is in user local. And Migration Assistant tends to copy over user local, or if it doesn't, I can manually do it because it's just one directory tree, and that's all my stuff. But I do take that opportunity to say, okay, well, my stuff came over, and it seems like it works, but do I want to start upgrading or uninstalling or putting something different in or whatever? So that's what I do when I get a new machine.
All right, let's talk about the most important thing in the world. It is not new MacBook Pros, as exciting as they are. It is instead the ATP Store, which is back, baby, just like we said last time. The store is back. This is the middle of 3 episodes where we plan to talk about this, so you are running out of time. You are running out of time. So the ATP Store is back, in case you missed last week. We've got all new stuff. We've got ATP the Flamethrower. No, not really. We've got ATP M1 Pro shirts and Max shirts. We have them in black, various flavors of black fabric with a rainbow front and printed on the back. Then we also have the monochrome version where it's the colors of the shirt are various different colors, but the ink is always white. And again, there is something on the back there. And then we also have the ATP winter hat. Note, this is not a chicken hat. Perhaps we should call it a turkey hat. I don't know.
Is it like the chicken hat, but just really big and less flavorful?
Yeah, exactly right. And then we have the ATP hoodie.
Turkey is not less flavorful than chicken. What? That's madness.
Actually, that is probably true. You're probably right.
Sorry, drier. It's dry.
Well, that depends on who's cooking it, I suppose.
No, there it is. We've got the ATP hoodie, and then we've got the classic ATP logo shirt. All of these things are available at atp.fm/store. If you are listening to this right now, if you're driving, maybe signal and then pull over. If you're walking, maybe just ease your way to the side. If you're biking, do what you need to do, whatever bicyclists do, to get into a less dangerous situation. And go to atp.fm/store and check out this sweet, sweet merchandise. John spent a lot of time, y'all, on the backs of these shirts. Don't let John down. Don't let us down. Buy a shirt. Buy a shirt for you. Buy a shirt for your friend. Everyone will be happy. atp.fm/store. Also, don't forget, if you are an ATP member, you get 15% off on timed sales like this one. So if you want, you could become a member at atp.fm/join. You could buy your merchandise. You could cancel right after, but instead you could hold on and listen to the amazing bootleg that we put out every week, including this one, which I can assure you was a disaster.
This is a good one. If you're going to listen to a bootleg, this week is a good time to start.
This is a good time to start. So atp.fm/join to become a member, and don't listen to John. Just stick with it. You'll love it. And one way or another, atp.fm/store to order some new sweet merchandise. Thank you to all of you for sponsoring this show. All right, let's do some follow-up. We have a Ask ATP that I think I might have somebody promoted an Ask ATP from Cesar Cavazos. I'm going to go with that. And Cesar asks, can you do a follow-up on Marco's dock setup? Which one will you be using with the 2021 MacBook Pro? If I recall correctly, both CalDigit and OWC were the culprits of network issues, weren't the culprits of network issues. But I'm also wondering if the charging power, 87 watts and 90 watts, will be an issue. I would also like to know this because I really think this MacBook Pro that I'm talking to you on right now is going to be my only, real computer soon. So I would like a dock and a friggin' monitor, Apple, but we'll leave that for another time. I would like a dock. So Marco, what's your dock situation?
So interestingly, I still do own both docks. I keep the OWC Thunderbolt dock at back in Westchester. So whenever I go back there, I plug into that. That's connected to my my LG Fine display, and I have a Fine setup there whenever I need to record there. But my primary setup with the XDR here at the beach is using actually none of those hubs.
Oh.
I have the CalDigit here, but I use it more for if I had to set up for a project doing something I'm currently playing with some some gaming hardware type stuff that I might do like capture of all three of us in the family playing a game. And to do that, I would actually use the CalDigit dock and capture onto my laptop, which is actually one of the reasons why I upgraded the laptop, even though I didn't necessarily need to, for other reasons. Anyway, so the CalDigit is kind of floating around my house as like a utility as needed thing right now. What I am using, though, is still just two cables plugged into my MacBook Pro. The Thunderbolt to Ethernet adapter, that is currently the chain, Thunderbolt 3 to Thunderbolt 2 to Thunderbolt 2 to Ethernet, which is how we are talking to each other right now. Listen to the bootleg if you want to hear the story of how that happened. And the other cable is going to my Pro Display XDR. And the XDR has on its butt 3 or 4 extra USB-C ports. And they're not Thunderbolt, they're USB, because there isn't enough bandwidth left over after the display signal to also offer Thunderbolt ports in the back. But it turns out that the only really high bandwidth thing I have is the Pro Display XDR, and everything else I plug into USB ports is mostly low bandwidth stuff. It's mostly keyboard receiver, sound devices, input and output, a couple of external hard drives or external SSDs, USB devices, charging cables for a watch and my iPhone, developer tether cable. So there's mostly not a lot of high-end needs I have here. I really just need a bunch of USB ports. Also under my desk, I have a USB-A hub. So that provides a lot of the less modern connections to a lot of that stuff too. In the back of the Pro Display XDR, I connect my audio interface, that USB hub, something else, I think one of the charging cables. And that covers my needs just fine. It really is like, that's really all I need. So for now, I'm not using any of these hubs, and I don't think I will need to add one to my desk in the near future.
I'm blown away that you're using your USB audio interface via the XDR. Like, there's no reason why that should be a problem, but I don't know, superstition just tells me that seems like a terrible decision.
Well, and I've been using it that way since I got the Mac Mini, so about a year. The thing is, like, I used to have that same superstition because it wasn't a superstition. Like when the USB-C generation of laptops first came out in 2015 and 2016, the USB hubs and dongles and stuff on the marketplace were very unreliable, including the ones that were on the back of the LG Fine. Those ports are notoriously unreliable. Hubs and dongles were unreliable. And so for the early generation of USB-C stuff, it wasn't wise to plug in something like an audio recording device into anything besides a port that was on the computer. And that's one of the reasons why I always wanted more ports on the computer, because the things I needed to be 100% reliable had to go into those ports. They couldn't go into a hub and for me to actually depend on them. Well, the XDR's ports have been 100% reliable for me. I haven't had any problems with them at all. So it's great in the sense that I guess after spending $15 million on this display and another $5 million on its stand, that I get 4 extra USB-C ports.
Yay. Do you remember the actual names of the two, the OWC and the CalDigit hub? Is the CalDigit the TS3 Plus?
Yes.
Does that sound right?
Yeah, they've been making it for a while. It's great. It's like this solid block of aluminum. Anecdotally, or I mean, just opinion-wise, between the CalDigit and the OWC Thunderbolt 3 dock, I think it's called, I prefer the CalDigit. They have similar capabilities. The CalDigit is a little bit like smaller and stockier in its shape, and it's, even though they both seem to be built with high quality, the CalDigit is basically a giant block of metal. Like the outside has fins, so it cools off without needing like a big fan anywhere. Like it's a really nicely built thing. I'm a big fan of CalDigit from this purchase alone. Like I've never had any of their previous stuff, but this device has made me a fan. It just feels so damn solid. They have something called the Element Hub that I desperately want, but it's out of stock everywhere right now. Because what's interesting is that now that the MacBook Pros are providing HDMI and SD, I no longer really want those things in a hub. Mm-hmm. Every little feature that a hub provides, every little hardware thing that it has built in is kind of a liability if I don't need or want it. Because, for instance, all these hubs have their own audio devices built in. They have a headphone jack, maybe a microphone, like a headset kind of microphone jack input. But so it has all these additional things. And to me, all of those things are liabilities for some kind of peripheral that will be permanently connected to my computer that I can't separate from the rest of the hub that might at some point get flaky or have some kind of weird like driver issue with the OS or something like that. I want my hubs to be mostly dumb. I want the the variety of ports and stuff to be in the computer. The computer should have things like, the SD slot and the HDMI port and hardware Ethernet if it's a desktop and stuff like that. That should all be in the computer, and the hub should only be necessary, ideally, to provide just more ports, more like USB ports, ideally, and Thunderbolt ports. So what I'm looking forward to is I'm hoping to get the CalDigit Element Hub at some point soon once it comes back in stock, because all it is Thunderbolt in, and then I think it's 3 Thunderbolt out, and a whole bunch of USB-A out. And so and that's it. Like, there's no networking, there's no sound, there's no HDMI. Like, it's just a USB and Thunderbolt port multiplier, and that's awesome. That's exactly what I want. So hopefully I can get one of those sometime soon. But I hope that now, as as these new, a little bit more generous port-filled laptops start going into the market and over time start taking over the market as they filter in and people start replacing the old USB-C only ones after a few years from now, I'm hoping that the world of these like big multi-port hubs kind of gets reduced, and we are just seeing much more just like multiple USB port multipliers or multiple Thunderbolt port multipliers. Hopefully we'll get there.
I wish the Element Hub worked without a power supply, though, because it is so slim and small and just has those ports on it, but it does require DC power, so you've got a power brick and you've got a cord. And
yeah, I know. That is unfortunate. But as far as I know, and the other sad part, too, is that on the market, I think CalDigit makes one, I think OWC and maybe a couple other, maybe Belkin. There are other ones on the market that are bus-powered Thunderbolt hubs, but they only tend to have 2 USB ports and then like 2 HDMI or 2 DisplayPort ports. And a couple of different brands make this, so I'm guessing it's some kind of like just standard Intel chip they have in there to do this. But that, to me, like, that's fine, but I don't really need 2 additional HDMI ports. I really just need more USB ports. But I also recognize the power demands of modern USB devices. They expect a certain amount of power from the bus, and while Thunderbolt can deliver a lot of power over that port, I'm sure there's, I don't know what the limit is off the top of my head for Thunderbolt devices. Maybe it's like 30 watts or something like that. But, I bet they would hit that limit pretty fast once they're adding ports.
Yeah, it's from their FAQ. They say Thunderbolt ports each require 15 watts of power, and USB ports each provide up to 7.5 watts of power. So if you add it all up, you need a power supply. You can't get that from the bus. It makes sense, but,
Yeah. We are sponsored this week by Squarespace. Start building your website today at squarespace.com/ATP. Enter offer code ATP at checkout to get 10% off. Make your next move with Squarespace. I've made lots of moves with Squarespace. I have built my own sites on Squarespace. I have set up other people with Squarespace. My village's website is on Squarespace. Our preschool's website was on Squarespace. And the reason I use it is because I've made websites in pretty much every way there is to make websites. And Squarespace is the right tool for the job most of the time. If you have needs that they cover, and believe me, you probably do, because they can cover simple things from, a couple of pages of content all the way up to really complicated otherwise stuff to host, like storefronts or podcasts. They can host all of that on Squarespace, and their tools are really easy to use, whether you're a nerd or not. There's no coding required. Everything is visual, drag and drop, live previewing. So you start with one of their templates, and they're professionally designed, and they look modern, and they look great on every screen size and everything. And then you can customize it as much as you want for your own colors and logos and branding, and you can rearrange blocks of content, add your own blocks of content, whatever you need. So it's fully customizable to fit how you want it to look. But you have Squarespace's awesome designers to back you up with the bones of the thing. And so it's just fantastic. And then they have great support if you need it. Honestly, you probably won't. It's super easy to use, but their support is there when you need it. And there's all sorts of problems you don't have to worry about. Upgrades, server maintenance, uptime, like any of that stuff. They take care of all of that for you. So you focus on your business or your hobby or whatever it is you made the site for. It's fantastic. You can see for yourself with a free trial at squarespace.com/ATP. ATP, no credit card required. Just build the site for free without giving them a dime. When you want to sign up, go to back there, squarespace.com/ATP. Use offer code ATP to get 10% off your first purchase. That's squarespace.com/ATP. Offer code ATP for 10% off your first purchase. Thank you so much to Squarespace. Make your next move with Squarespace.
All right, John, tell me about your AirPods 3.
A quick update on my AirPods 3 I talked about last week. Now I've had a week to spend with them. I've used them as my main and only AirPods, which means I use them a lot. Use them while listening to podcasts, watching TV shows and movies on my iPad, did all the things. So update on the comfort. I think they're fine. My ears don't hurt. They're not fatigued. Like I was worried about that. They do still feel different. They feel larger in the ear. They press up against parts that they didn't. But it's after a week, I feel confident in saying that if these were going to bother my ears in some way, they would have already, and they don't. So, I mean, that's just me. You have to try them yourself to see how it works for you. But I'm personally glad that they don't bother me. The case size, I did say that they come into charging case that's bigger, which kind of annoys me. It's worth noting that it is smaller than the AirPods Pro case. So if you think you're getting, it looks just like the AirPods Pro case, like it opens on the long side and everything like that, but it is smaller than that. It is slightly larger than the regular AirPods case, but still significantly smaller than the big AirPods Pro case. So don't be too afraid of the case. It's kind of like going from the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 10. Is that the time when we went bigger? I think 7 to 10, right? Mm-hmm. It's a little bit bigger, but you get used to it. And then finally, spatial audio. These are my first headphones, besides messing with my wife's AirPods Pro, that I've used that support spatial audio, and I don't like it. Every time I try to do stuff on my iPad, I'm like, why the hell is the audio all messed up? Oh, okay, spatial audio. And then, do you want head track spatial audio? Do you want non-head track? It's like, no, I don't want any spatial audio. I mean, I'm also watching TV shows and movies, but whatever they're doing, some of them says like Dolby Atmos available. I'm like, no, I mean, it sounds worse to me. Maybe with music, I tried it with music a little bit too, and even including downloading ones that are, whatever the keyword is for the music that it says re-download to get the fancy spatial multi-track thing. For whatever reason, it's not what I want. Definitely don't want it on a TV show. It just makes it sound like I don't want the thing where, hey, the sounds like it's coming from the iPad. I don't want that. I want the opposite of that. That's the point of wearing headphones, is that the sound doesn't sound like it's coming from the iPad. It sounds like it's right in my ears, and that's much better. But then also with the music, the multi-track music, like I just want it to be mixed for headphones, right? I don't want it to sound like everything I'm listening to isn't like, it's like on the stereo equipment from my youth when they first started having like concert hall mode where everything sounds like it's in a cathedral.
Yep.
It's not that bad. Anyway, it's not to my personal taste, but just for people who don't know, if they just buy these and start using their iPad and everything sounds weird, remember that you can, upper right corner, swipe down to get the control center and then hold down on the volume bar. This is not particularly discoverable. I don't even know what the quote unquote real way to do it is, but anyway, upper right corner, swipe down on iOS or iPad OS. Hold your finger down on the volume slider and it will pop up a full screen thing that will have a giant volume slider. And then at the bottom of the giant volume slider, you'll see probably 3 buttons for like spatial audio off and spatial audio head tracked and spatial audio fixed. And then you can switch among them. And it does seem to remember your settings per app, which means that every time I use a different app, now I'm using Netflix, now I'm using Hulu, now I'm using Apple TV Plus. Now I have to, in every app I have to convince it no spatial audio. It does seem to remember so far, which is good, but yeah, not a fan. Oh yeah, and I guess speaking of not a fan, the tapping versus squeezing, I'm getting a lot better at doing the little pinch. Still miss tapping. I really wish they would bring that back in a future version of these, but I'm really not holding my breath. But yeah, the squeezing is it's worse for my use cases. It recurred to me when I was, thinking about the squeezing and all this stuff during the week. I used to frequently knock on the AirPods with my knuckles or the back of my hand when my fingers were all gross from like cooking or washing something or whatever. Forget about that. Try pinching. If you have gross fingers that have like cooking stuff on them, you can't pinch with your knuckles. At least I can't anyway. I'm not that I guess I could also go with the, hey dingus stop and hey dingus play type of thing. But anyway, still the audio quality is better enough that I'm definitely going to stick with it, but I will miss tapping.
Understandable. I still haven't tried spatial audio nor the pinching versus, tapping thing. I only have non-spatial audio tappable AirPods, and I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about either of those things when eventually I upgrade. One of you wanted to know what our Monterey situation is, who's updated, who hasn't, etc. Marco and I just got new computers, so I think it's safe to say that we've upgraded.
And you have no choice.
Yep.
Yeah, you didn't upgrade.
What's your situation, John?
Oh, well, I mean, just before we get to me, like, obviously your new computers all came with Monterey and you can't use anything else. But what about your older / existing computers? Did you bother upgrading those? Marco's got so many computers I can't keep track, so he's got to have some. Neither can he. Like, did you upgrade everyone else's computer in the house to Monterey? Is your old Mac Mini upgraded to Monterey? What's the upgrade story?
The Mac Mini is not, just because I had no reason to upgrade it to Monterey. And it's funny, when the M1 Macs first launched last fall, and developers had the opportunity to either leave our apps as is and let them be available, iOS developers had the ability to let our apps become available in the Mac App Store for M1 Macs, or you could opt out. And I said at the time, why would anybody opt out? This is like free additional users for your app. And I figured, what could possibly go wrong? Of course, I'm going to leave Overcast in as, for able to run on Macs. Well, it worked okay for the most part for most of the last year until iOS 15 beta started coming out and macOS Monterey beta started coming out, and there started to become bugs in the now shipping versions of Xcode that build for iOS 15 and macOS Monterey. Now I have to actually test Overcast on Big Sur when building with Monterey's version of Xcode. Is this actually working now, or is it going to crash in weird ways? It's no longer like a you get this for free kind of thing. So I'm not saying I'm going to remove it from this. I'm not. But when it does crash on Big Sur, I hear from every single person who uses it, and they start leaving 1-star reviews and bringing my average down. Even though they are not that numerous, there are enough of them that if the app crashes, I will hear from them. And I won't hear from them in my support email. I'll hear from them in 1-star reviews. So I do have a need now to become a Mac app tester. I need to be able to test my app on old versions of Mac OS. I do intend at some point soon to look into, how do I virtualize old versions of Mac OS so I can do it that way? But until I figure that out, I'm just going to leave this Mac Mini running with screen share enabled, which maybe I'll get to that story. But I'll leave it running with screen share enabled in my closet for a while so I can just log into that and test it whenever I need to.
Yeah, I don't believe I upgraded my Mac Mini. That's basically a Plex server, little else. But I have upgraded basically everything else that I touch. I don't even know what version of Mac OS Aaron's Adorable is on, but it's probably 2 versions old now. But I upgraded everything. It's been fine. I like having focus modes echoed across all my devices. I know that's very divisive, and not everyone will agree with me, and that's fine. But I like it. I don't use it super aggressively, but as an example, I have a podcasting focus mode that comes on at 8:00 on Wednesdays and stops at midnight on Wednesdays, and so that is an example of something that's echoed across all my devices, which I like. And I feel like there's some other stuff, although off the top of my head I can't remember what, but I feel like there's some other stuff that I've liked about Monterey. But AirPlay receiving is pretty cool. So I can use my iMac Pro or perhaps MacBook Pro as one component of a multi-room audio setup, which I like. The only thing I didn't like though was, apparently it listens on port 5000, which I typically use locally when I write blog posts for my blog. And I use port 5000 for the web server when I test locally. And I was starting it on the MacBook Pro in order to test or look at a blog post. And it kept saying, well, the port is in use. And I was like, what are you talking about? Do I have something running somewhere that I don't even realize? And it took me a little bit of DuckDuckGoing before I realized, apparently it listens on port 5000 and one other one. I don't remember which one. I don't know why, but that's the way it works.
How did we both end up with using port 5000 as our local web server thing? Because I use the same one.
I have no idea. It's because we're so damn smart, John. That's why.
That's weird. It's not a convention that I know of, and it just
is it a Node thing? It might be a Node thing because this is a Node based.
I'm not using Node.
Well, you do sometimes. Last I heard, you were doing a bunch of Node for work.
No, I'm talking about my hypercritical.co. My ridiculous stack of Perl garbage. There's no Node in there.
Fair enough.
It's port 5000.
Oh, funny how that works. Well, anyways, but no, all in all, it's been going well. How is it on your completely slow and boring Mac Pro?
Well, I mean, the reason I put this topic in here is a lot of people ask, like, how's Monterey going there? We kind of said the same thing quickly with iOS. What the hell number are we on now? 15?
15.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we all just upgraded to iOS 15 and it was fine. And I have to say the same thing in Monterey. In fact, the most difficult thing about Monterey was me making sure all my backups were up to date because they just take so long, right? Especially the ones to the Synology, because I guess, I don't know, like backing up over the network is always just so much slower than backing up to a local disk and when you're in a hurry. So anyway, I updated all the backups. The new version of Super Duper is out that supports, bootable backups from Big Sur and Monterey. And so I made it fresh, make sure everything was like up to date. What I like to do is all the only thing I do before the upgrade is I do all the backups and nothing else. Don't do any work because then you have to re-back up, right? So I do all the backups. I got all my backups all squared away, backed up to Backblaze, Super Duper clone, local time machine, remote time machine. Then you can upgrade. And upgraded, it went fine, uneventful. Just did the upgrade, it did its thing, and nothing broke, and everything's good. So, and I was using myself as the guinea pig, and I did my traditional upgrade time is right after we record ATP, so that gives me the maximum amount of time to screw up my setup before the next recording. So basically, last week, Thursday morning or whatever, I just started this process because I had already done all the backups. And based on that experience, that it was fine on my computer, I upgraded my wife's computer too. So if people are wondering, hey, how's Monterey going? Now, with the caveat that there is some reports that updating BridgeOS is kind of hosing people's older Macs. So if you have an older Mac, maybe look up that problem. I couldn't find a good link for it in show notes. All the ones that I saw were just like, hey, some older Macs are getting bricked because BridgeOS gets updated or whatever. And I've had that happen to my Mac Pro in the past, and it's no fun. So you do not want to get into the situation. So it might be worth waiting if you have an older Mac. I wish I could tell you the list of Macs. I looked at like 4 different articles, and they all just said older Macs. I'm like, you need to tell me what that means. Which specific Macs should not upgrade? Anyway, but if you have a modern Mac, a very up-to-date one, and you're wondering, is Monterey okay? Monterey 12.0.1 or whatever the version is that like doesn't ship on hardware, but like that you get when you upgrade, it's been fine for me. I think it's safe for you to upgrade if you have a modernish Mac.
We are sponsored this week by Stripe. If you're a startup founder, you know early decisions can be the difference between success and failure. One decision that thousands of successful founders have made is choosing Stripe as their payments platform. Over the last decade, Stripe has made processing payments simple and borderless, enabling ambitious businesses such as Shopify, Postmates, and Kickstarter to grow revenue and expand to new markets quickly. In fact, Kickstarter was able to scale to accept payments from 195 countries, all supported by Stripe's payments platform. And by partnering with Stripe, you can free up your team to focus on other areas of your business, because Stripe has engineered the world's most powerful and easy-to-use APIs, so you can get up and running in minutes, not days. Now, I've personally used Stripe for years as my payment processor of choice, because payments used to be really hard to deal with online, and Stripe was a breath of fresh air when they came out, and they've continued to just push things forward so aggressively and so well. Using Stripe, it's the nicest, easiest to use, and best documented API from any web service I've ever seen. It's so good, no matter what language you use or how skilled or unskilled you are. How much you want to rely on their built-in libraries versus making your own. They cover all of those needs, and they make accepting payments, which is kind of a messy thing normally, they make it super clean and easy. I've built with them, again, numerous products that I've built against their API. I continue to use them to this day because they are the best. They also have now a no-coding solution. They recently launched Payment Links. This allows you to sell online by just generating a link, so you can share it with your customers, you get paid quickly, all with no coding required. So whether you're an online or in-person retailer, a software platform, marketplace, or other subscription kind of business or payment business, visit Stripe.com to learn more about how Stripe can support your business today. That's Stripe.com to get started today. Thank you so much to Stripe for sponsoring our show.
So The Verge released their MacBook Pro reviews, I don't know, a few days ago now, and there was some very interesting kind of banter in that review, but most especially around battery life. And they wrote, and I watched the video review, and I believe I read the post as well, and the video review was very good too, but they wrote, the 16-inch MacBook Pro with the M1 Pro ran for 16 hours on its battery during continuous use, making it the longest-lasting laptop we've ever tested, period. Ever. Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, the Verge stuff is not particularly scientific in terms of battery testing, but they basically just use the computers to do what they normally do. So I would imagine this is light use, right? But in any scenario getting 16 hours of battery. As they said in the review, they felt like they wanted to like stop working and go to sleep, but the computer still had battery. Like they ran out of battery before the computer did. So yeah, that 100 kilowatt, the biggest battery you can put in a laptop and still have it be allowed on a plane. Apparently you put that in combined with an M1 Pro, not the Max, but the plain old M1 Pro, can result in very, very long battery life, which is great.
Now, tell me about charging a MacBook Pro via USB-C. I, for one, am extremely happy that that's still a thing, and it sounds like it had to be a thing. Am I right?
Yeah, Ethan C. wrote in to say that his theory is backed up by some links we'll put in the show notes. Apple is required to allow charging through at least one USB-C port in order to certify the laptop as Thunderbolt 4 compatible. Here's some text from this Thunderbolt PDF that says, required PC charging on at least one computer port for thin and light notebook that requires less than 100 watts to charge. And a similar citation from PC Magazine. So it seems like to be properly certified as Thunderbolt 4, you have to do this. Now, that said, Apple has had no problem in the past just doing whatever the hell it wants with supposedly standard interfaces. An example would be, well, I can't say this is non-standard, but it's definitely weird. Someone will write in and tell me whether it's non-standard Apple thing or just like weird. The USB connector that connected to USB keyboards for Macs back when the power button was still on the keyboard. Do you guys remember that?
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they had it was a USB-A connector, but it had like a notch in it. Like it was weird. Like you couldn't plug in a regular USB-A.
They've always loved notches.
Yeah, well, it was like a little, I think it was like a triangular notch or whatever. Because, otherwise, plain old USB, you couldn't put a power button on the keyboard. It just wouldn't work. So Apple sort of made its own thing. And I think that's a totally Apple proprietary thing or it's some weird variant of USB. But anyway, either way, Apple has no problem doing whatever the hell it feels like with any kind of buses and just saying, hey, this is the way it is in Apple computers. Or just look at Apple Display Connector, ADC, which was a totally made up port that tunneled a bunch of other protocols over it or whatever. So it's not like Apple was forced to do this, but it just seems like this was the path of least resistance for Apple, and we're all glad they did it.
Indeed. Tell me about MacBook Pro compatibility mode and its resolution.
This is a question for both of you to answer, because I can't test these things, and I see these things on the internet, and I can't figure out whether they're true or not. So this is in reference to the sort of the checkbox that's in the Get Info window that we referred to on the show, like right after the MacBook Pros were announced. We talked about this, and now more and more people are discovering it. It is in Monterey. If you go in the Finder, select an application, go to Get Info or hit Command I. There's a checkbox. What does it say? It's not listed as compatibility mode. It is called
Scale to fit below built-in camera.
There you go. But basically what it says is, hey, this application might not know how to deal with the notch. So just make this application think it is in a 16:10 screen and that the notch doesn't exist, right? And the way I thought it did that was it would just tell the application, hey, the screen bounds end at essentially where the bottom of the menu bar would normally be. So, hey, you're on a 16:10 screen, and just everything above that would just be black because the application would just ignore that part. But if you look at this video that's attached here in this tweet that shows that purports to show this feature in action, what it looks like it does instead is that it scales down the entire interface, right? That it like, instead of chopping off the top, it takes the picture that would be displayed on the screen and scales it, including on the sides, like that it basically goes to a non-native resolution by slightly scaling down the whole image so that it gets below the notch. So it's not just shorter, but is also narrower. And that seems bad. That's not what I thought this feature did, and I don't want it to do this. I would much rather have chop off the top pixel so it stays at native res. So can you guys try this and tell me if this is true?
Not it.
Fine.
My fingers on my nose.
Yeah, we don't want you touching anything.
No, you don't need to run full screen. Just look at the terrible video with background music that probably just bled through my headphones into the
Yeah,
record.
I'm not listening to the background music. So, but they're running this full screen. Well, screw it. I'll just try it. All right. So I took day one as an example of something that I know supports full screen mode, and I've ticked scale to fit below built-in camera. I'm now closing the info window. I'm starting day one, and it's just in a window exactly as you would expect. However, when I go full screen, yeah. It comes in a little bit for sure. It comes in laterally and vertically.
Is it displaying non-native res? It seems like it would have to be, huh?
I don't know. Well, I took a screenshot, so let's see how big the screenshot is.
Well, anyway, it wouldn't surprise me if this mode is not something that got a lot of time put into it by Apple's engineers before the release of these things. Because, I mean, first of all, a lot of this stuff kind of seems like it was a little bit, last minute. But also, as soon as an app is built with the modern tools, like with the current version of Xcode, that option disappears for it. So this is not something that Apple intends to have as like a long-term thing that people are going to do for certain apps all the time. This is literally just like, let's get us through this transition period as, as smoothly and possibly hackily as we can. But this is a temporary thing. This is not going to be, a thing that you use more than, a few months.
I don't know if this is there's a info plist key that's NS something or other or whatever, and I don't know if that is the exact same thing. Is this like I don't think it's just building on the new tools. The new tools may give you that key in your info plist by default, but you could in theory just delete it off of there and still build with the newest SDK. So I don't know if this checkbox is the same as that info plist key. But anyway, this is disappointing because what it means is that we get all these advantages that we were talking about, having more screen space and having native resolution. And always having the ability to ignore the notch if you want to on a per app basis. But now it seems like if you do that on a per app basis with your older apps, you're giving up the native resolution.
Yeah, I think you might be right.
Which people maybe don't notice because, again, there's a lot of pixels there and it's like 254 DPI or whatever. But yeah. And it does make sense for Marco is like saying like maybe they didn't want to put too much time to this. Scaling is less work because then you're like, look, I don't change anything. As far as the app is concerned, it is displaying exactly as it would like if it was notch savvy. It's just that we literally shrink on output. We shrink the image so that it avoids the notch, but everything else about it is exactly identical.
Right, because that way they wouldn't have to like build in a whole thing where, like, if the app asks the hardware how big is your screen in pixels, it can just give the same answer no matter what, and just scale it down so you don't see it.
It doesn't change. Like it doesn't, instead of this, it doesn't think that it's on a 16 by 10 screen, where the other apps think they're on a 16 by 10 point something screen, right?
Right. Yeah.
If we figure out more about that, we'll update. But otherwise, it's one minor disappointment. Everyone should update their apps to be notch savvy.
And speaking of the notch, apparently its code name was Daisy, as per Philippe Esposito.
I just thought it was cute because that's my dog's name. And that we have some symbols pulled out of the, I guess a class dump or something. You get daisy bounds, you get display daisy bounds, get daisy width. That's cute.
It's a notch-shaped notch.
Mm-hmm. Reference acknowledged. All right, 120 hertz scrolling in Mac OS on the new MacBook Pros. I can tell you from experience, very hit or miss.
Yeah, that's what this 9 to 5 Mac article says. Apparently, Catalyst apps run at 120 hertz, as you would expect, although on iOS, there's still some things you might have to do to make your animations run at 120 hertz, whatever. But we were talking about, Marco didn't even notice the 120 hertz when he had his new computer last week. And we said, it must be in Safari, right? Well, apparently Safari is one of the apps that doesn't support, or at least as of the time of this article, doesn't support 120 hertz because Apple has to do some update or something to it, which is weird and kind of disappointing. The funny thing is that apparently someone on Twitter said that you can get 120 hertz if you run Chrome in a Windows VM.
Oh my gosh.
Right? So you're virtualizing Windows and then you're running Windows Chrome and scroll that and you get 120 hertz, but not in native Mac Safari. So Apple needs to get on this.
I'm sure they will, but that is quite funny. All right, Marco, tell me about your Mystery Terabyte. Did you find it?
Not really, but I can tell that it's my photos. So many people wrote in to say, okay, you got to give this thing full disk access or run this thing as root or both or disable SIP or whatever. No matter what I did, I could not find what that terabyte was. It always showed up as like miscellaneous or system files or inaccessible or whatever, in every single tool people recommended. I did learn when I got my new desktop laptop, I decided to sync my entire photo library to it because I now had the space to do that. And it all downloaded, and sure enough, it was about 900 gigs. When I'm looking at the like mystery space on my Mac Mini, it is pretty much exactly that size. Like it varies a little bit gig to gig here and there, but it's about 900 gigs. So it's very clear to me that when I told the Mac Mini, store my photo library on this external USB hard drive or USB SSD, and it only stored 70 gigs there, it's very clear to me that function doesn't work. Like the function of I'm telling you to store this photo library on this other volume can't be trusted. Because what it clearly did instead was store all those photos on my actual main volume.
That is weird, though, because like I said, my photo library is on an external disk on my wife's computer, and it will not fit on the main drive. The library itself is 700 or 800 gigs, and this thing has a 1 terabyte drive that is filled with other stuff that takes up that space. It can't possibly be putting the photos on the main drive. So somehow there is and I didn't tell it to do it. I just put the photo library over there, and then I, started up Photos holding down the Option key and pick that external one. And you have it marked as the system library, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and it still is. The one on the external drive is still marked as the current system library, and it seems to get new photos. But there seems to be some kind of mechanism that is probably in some kind of bug state. I don't think it started out this way. It's probably in some kind of bug state, but now it's just writing everything to mystery locked storage somewhere on the main drive.
I wonder if you deleted your photo library, right? Would that purge the space and then reinitialized it essentially on the external drive only? Would it download all the photos to the external one? Because that's definitely weird.
And I mean, this is one of the reasons why I decided to do a clean install on the desktop laptop instead of migrating that install over, because that install, that's also the same one that every time I reboot, it has the recovered items or whatever on the desktop, and then I can't delete it. Yeah, every time I get a system update.
That's not healthy.
No, it isn't every boot. It's every time I get an OS update. So it adds those relocated items or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
And then I haven't been able to empty my trash for a year.
Oh my gosh.
Because every time I empty it, it says, oh, sorry, X11 can't be deleted. So I skip, and then I have it empty everything else.
Oh, I told you to go into your .trash folder and use RM. Remember, we talked about that.
Yeah, and so the solution to that, many people wrote it and was okay, first disable system integrity protection in recovery, and then remove it and with this special way, and then go back. And I just never felt like doing that. So I just have been hitting skip every time I on the 3 files that won't get deleted. Anyway, so there were multiple reasons why I decided to leave that installation behind.
I have to say, by the way, I have some experience slinging photo libraries around, having the same photo library on multiple computers and having to move it from an internal and external drive. Photo library, especially, only if you use iCloud Photos, it's pretty easy to just either move it from one place to another as is, copy it. I've copied my photo library from one disk to another. I've done super duper backups of my photo library disk onto another thing, or just to delete it and just to say, hey, iCloud, give me back all my photos. With Marco's weird bug case aside, it is supposed to be just a self-contained .photo library directory that contains all your stuff, and it's just one huge directory tree, and you can move it around just it looks like a single file, but you can move it around like a giant directory tree, and you can delete it and reconstitute it, which I think is the right thing to do. I mean, I'm not sure you need to do a clean OS install, but if it's in this weird state, I would just delete that entirely. Make sure you have good backups, delete that library entirely, and then just get all your disk stuff sorted out before, don't even launch Photos anymore. Just get your disk stuff sorted out so your disk looks normal, and then you could then launch Photos, and it would be like, hey, where's my photo library? And you would say, oh, make a new one here, and it's your system library, and turn on iCloud Photos, and then just wait, 5 hours for it to download.
Well, and that's what I ended up doing with the new computer. But my concern there was that this is the very first time, that break as I'm abandoning that installation and having it re-download everything. This is the first time that I am losing control of the files. Until this point, that has been my photo library since I started using Apple Photos, and I've just migrated the actual files by copying them to the next computer every time that computer has changed. This is the first time I'm taking Apple's version of the files as the canonical ones. And so while I have no reason not to trust Photo Library, it's been very reliable for me over time, that still is a bit of a leap of faith that okay, I am no longer copying from computer to computer the ones I know are correct. I'm now hoping that Apple's versions are correct and complete and all there.
I think you already crossed that bridge in a recent update, maybe 1 or 2 OSs ago, where they basically changed the path of every single file inside your library, although you didn't know it. Lots of people complained about it because they had been relying on the paths inside the library, but they basically changed them all to UUIDs. And I don't think, it was an incredibly long updating library process, I don't think it just renamed them. I think what it actually did is pull new ones from iCloud, put them in the UUID location, and delete your local ones. I'm not entirely sure what that process was like. So you may have already crossed that bridge without even knowing it. You just didn't know that it was essentially abandoning years and years worth of files downloaded from cameras and replacing them with an entirely new directory structure where every one of your photos is named with a UUID.
Ugh.
But that already happened. You did that a year ago and didn't know it.
Yeah, because I especially like I am very careful never to do that with music because iTunes Match is not that reliable.
Yes.
And for this music move, I'm very glad that I have the Mac Mini still. That was being my source. I still have it. I didn't blow it away or sell it yet because I thought I moved all my music over just by copying the music directory and then opening up new music on new computer. One song in each of my Fish concerts in the recent week or two, one song in each concert was grayed out. It would say location iCloud, but I couldn't download it. And when I double clicked it to play, nothing would happen. Okay, something didn't work. So I recopied with rsync. I just quit music, rsynced from the old to the new, just copy the whole directory over again, start over. Okay, and eventually I did get that to work. I don't know what the heck happened the first time, but yeah, there's been some weirdness with music over the years. So I never want to have to do that with music. I never want to have to rely on that. But it does seem like Photos is much more reliable in that way.
Yeah, and I don't know what happened with that. I mean, maybe that's a feature that we just don't know about. If someone on the Photos team knows a legit scenario in which Marco could get into the situation where ostensibly the photo library is on an external disk, but it's taking hundreds of gigs on the internal one, please let us know.
Yeah, I'm just glad that is not my system of record. That's all I'm saying.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
This is all a success story for photo libraries. The fact that he could just delete it and pull it back down, that's the magic.
Yeah, I mean that's the great thing. It is very I guess it's a good peace of mind to know that photo library is a pretty good backup. It did fully sync over. As far as I could tell, it looks like everything's there. I don't think it's missing anything. I couldn't find anything that would be missing. But it is still a little unnerving.
Yeah. Related to this, although it has nothing to do with macOS, Kevin Chen wrote in to say that iOS isn't always good about deleting purgeable files when the phone is low on free space. But when ProRes is enabled, the camera app gains a, quote, free resources, quote, button to trigger this deletion manually. Apple says freeing resources will clear temporary system or app data that might be stored in your phone. It doesn't permanently delete unrecoverable data, but might require some apps to refresh data when they're used again. It continues later on. The camera app will also free resources automatically when ProRes is enabled in less than 5 minutes of recording time is available. And apparently it'll free up about 15 minutes worth at a time, which in ProRes is 90 gigs, which is bananas when you're in 4K 60. So that's just something useful to know.
I wonder if there's this sort of skunkworks team at Apple behind both the sync messages button in messages and the free resources button in camera. Imagine a button to make the computer do a thing instead of just sort of crossing your fingers and saying, boy, I hope this phone notices that it's almost out of space and frees some space for me soon. No, just free resources. And the fact that it does it in chunks is terrible. But sync messages, free resources, don't be afraid to put those buttons in. But apparently only 2 teams in all of Apple have been somehow able to sneak through a useful button in their UI that lets people do a thing that a lot of people want to do, which is do the thing now, free the space now, purge the purgeable space now because I need the space now and you're not getting the hint. So
it's my space and I want it now.
Yeah. You skipped over one item in Ezekiel Ellen said in macOS Monterey, I think we might have mentioned this before, but it's worth bringing up again. There is now a UI and disk utility for Time Machine snapshots. In fact, I'm pretty sure we talked about this in the past. But just to remind people, if you don't want to use TMUtil and you don't understand where your space is going or whatever, and you want to see how many Time Machine snapshots do I have and how much space are they taking, a reminder that disk utility, the GUI app that comes with your Mac, has a way to do that. You can see all your snapshots and you can delete them. You just have to go to the View menu and select Show APFS Snapshots.
We are sponsored this week by Linode, my favorite place to run servers. Visit linode.com/ATP. See why Linode has been voted the top infrastructure as a service provider by both G2 and TrustRadius. I am personally a Linode customer for a very long time, and I love Linode. I've been with a lot of server hosts over the years, and when you need to host servers or compute instances or cloud services, whatever we're calling them this decade, you want Linode. It is by far the best host I've ever used for servers / instances / compute, whatever we're calling it. From their award-winning support to their ease of use, their ease of setup, it's clear why developers like me have been trusting Linode for big and small projects since 2003. They have an API, you can automate stuff. Their control panel is awesome and well-designed. It's fully featured. Their plans cover all sorts of needs, from very small to very big. You can start for just $5 a month on one of the smaller plans, and you can scale all the way up to whatever your needs are for hardware. So you can have high memory plans, high CPU plans, GPU compute plans. There's block storage, managed backups, Kubernetes, an upcoming bare metal release. There's so much at Linode. And for me, what's most important is that all this is delivered at an incredibly good value. Now, I've been with them, again, for a long time, and the entire time I've been with them, they've been the best value in the business. As technology gets better and they can offer you more for less, they do. So it's great. They stay competitive. You don't get locked in forever on some high price. It's fantastic. See for yourself at linode.com/ATP. Create your free account there, and you get $100 in credit. Once again, linode.com/ATP for $100 in credit. Thank you so much to Linode, my favorite place to run servers, for sponsoring our show.
Marco, you have some experience with Lutron Caséta. I think I might have mentioned this offhandedly last week, but you and I were jockeying over who was going to talk about Caséta, who did not sponsor this week. But I wanted to talk and do the sponsor read because I freaking love it. And as far as I knew, you love it. So tell me, what's going on with Lutron Caséta?
Yeah, so we decided to talk about this week as an actual topic because they are sponsoring our show. They sponsored last week and they're sponsoring next week. And so I thought it would be weird to talk about it as a topic on an episode they are sponsoring because, we try to be independent with that kind of stuff. So we decided this week is the time we're going to talk about it. And, obviously with that giant disclaimer, they are a sponsor, but I've been using them now for a little over a year in various roles in my house. And so if you recall, last time I mentioned this kind of stuff, so Lutron Caséta, just for the record, is a smart home system of switches and outlets by Lutron. And it's, various, and I think they have blinds and stuff. There's a couple other things, but it's mostly light switches and a couple of switched outlet things.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that they work on some sort of proprietary radio frequency or something like that. It is not Thread, and I have no idea if it is or ever will be Thread compatible, but it's spiritually similar in that it's got its own hub box that will, spew RF or whatever it needs to do in order to talk to the switches. And then, the hub is hooked up to Ethernet so you can talk to HomeKit and whatever else you might have in your house. But the reason this is important is because you're not relying on every one of these switches to get on your Wi-Fi. And in my experience, and I think I can speak for Marco in saying this, in Marco's experience, this is way more reliable. And in almost all of these cases, there are physical switches that you can use if you want to completely ignore HomeKit in its entirety, which is really, really nice too.
Yeah, because and this is exactly why I want to talk about it, because the last time we talked about this kind of thing, we had talked a few months back about I was frustrated with just the general unreliability of Wi-Fi smart outlets and Wi-Fi smart light bulbs, because it just seemed like Wi-Fi stuff works 90% of the time and then just doesn't, and it's very hard to find good, reliable stuff. And I had mentioned in particular there was a role I had in my house we have an ice maker that is loud enough that we don't want it running during quiet evening TV or movie watching time. But in the middle of the day, it's fine. And so I wanted to put it on some kind of timer outlet where I could adjust when it runs and, still be able to run it manually if I want, if we've ran out of ice or something, but that doesn't really happen. But anyway, I decided that, the regular 70s rotating knob timer switch, I wanted something a little bit smarter than that I could control. Also, the ice maker is built into the cabinet or built into the counter. And the outlet is behind it. And so to access the outlet, you have to pull the whole thing out, and it's a big deal. So I wanted something that I wouldn't have to ever pull the ice maker out to access physically. So something that had to be able to be put back there and A, still work, and B, never need to be touched. And for a while I had I tried a couple of different Wi-Fi smart outlets back there, and they were unreliable. They would work for a few weeks and then stop working. And then, I got to pull the whole thing out. That sucks. And so I eventually switched. There is a hole in the Lutron Caséta lineup. They don't make like a plain smart outlet the way you think of smart outlets. They make one that is like a lamp box that has a built-in dimmer and a 2-prong outlet only, because you don't really want to be running like a dimmer circuit on anything but like an old lamp, because that could mess up like other electronics, I think. So the idea is you're not supposed to plug in like an appliance into this thing. So they have that. They also make an outdoor switched outlet that is huge, because like it has a whole like outdoor housing, this big, thick, heavy cable. Well, I put one of those behind my ice maker. So because it's the only like switched outlet they make that as part of their system that is not like that lamp dimmer thing. So I installed that whenever we talked about that topic, which was probably 3-4 months ago now, something like that, right?
Something like that.
It has been rock solid reliable since then, 100% of the time. And that's something I don't think I can say 100% reliable about any other smart home thing I have ever used. Like, never. That literally has never happened. The Caséta stuff is 100% reliable. And it isn't just that. So I also have, I remember like back then we mentioned too, when we did our renovations here, that they had installed for like code compliance for the outdoor staircase lighting, they'd installed some staircase lights and a Caséta system to make them run on timers to only run when it's dark outside. And so I had actually been running Caséta stuff for like a year, and I hadn't even really thought about it ever, because it just works. Like it works every single day. It just quietly works, and you never have to think about it. You set it up, and then it just works. The strategy they use, I think what Casey mentioned earlier, is very important. They don't make smart light bulbs. They make switches and a couple of outlets. And so you can use whatever bulbs you want. And this is great, because I am a huge light bulb nerd. Like, I love getting like new, cool, nice lights, like getting more light for the same wattage and getting higher color rendering index. I wanted to mention also, I'm extremely happy with these lights I have from a company called Waveform Lighting. I don't know how good or well known this is, but somebody tipped me off to this a few months back, and I finally got them. They are the nicest LED bulbs I have ever used. Like, the light they produce, it's like super high CRI and super low flicker. My God, are they nice. Like, they are so good. The only thing is they're not dimmable, but otherwise they are super nice. Anyway, Waveform Lighting, also strong recommendation. And I have the 4000K ones in my office. Oh God, I love them so much. Anyway, what's great about the Caséta stuff is that it works at the switch level, so you can have a wall switch that is smart controlled. And that is by far the nicest way to do it, because then you can control it from the app. You can control it from HomeKit. You can get their little wireless switches, the little Pico switches, and you can put those wherever you want. So I also have a pair of those on my desk for the 2 lights that I have in my office. I have like a ceiling light and like a kind of on one wall I have these other lights. And those are all Caséta. The wall lights are actually, they plug into an outlet, and I have another one of those outdoor outlet switches from Caséta to control that. And then I could put over on my wall a switch that looks and works like any other light switch for that outlet plug. I also have on the wall, in the regular light switch box, a smart Caséta light switch that controls the ceiling lights. And so what this means is nobody else who ever enters this room or lives in my house has to know that these are smart lights.
Bingo.
Because there's a button on the wall. You turn it on and they turn on. You turn it off and they turn off. And it's the only way, like, you can't, like, trip over the cord for the lamp or accidentally switch off the lamp and then your smart bulb doesn't work anymore. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, it's just a switch on the wall that controls the lights on the ceiling. And it happens to also be smart. And that is the best of all worlds. When you combine that with the reliability they have, the only limitation I have for Caséta is that if you're using the outdoor plug as your switched outlet, it's kind of big and kind of expensive. I think it's like $70 because it's not made for that, obviously, but I'm using it that way anyway. I'm looking forward to actually, when I have my my Christmas lights this year outside, I bought a couple more of those to use for that because a couple of reasons. Number one, again, these things are rock solid reliable. Number two, I'm just getting a little more conscious over time of what kind of hardware manufacturer I'm letting into my house and onto my network. I don't really want a bunch of like no-name cheap stuff from Amazon from God knows what company running God knows what insecure software on my network. And I know I can do tricks like, isolating it on its own private network and stuff like that, but that's a lot of, administration and work and stuff, and most people don't even do that. And so I don't want to have to deal with that. Like, I want to get my stuff in my house that is on my network from a smaller number of companies with a higher level of trust. So I don't want to get like the $10 smart outlet on Amazon that's made by God knows what. That's not only do those not work very well, but I feel better not having a lot of that stuff in my network. But anyway, so I mentioned back then also, this past summer, we were talking about security cameras, and I was putting up a couple of cameras under my house because of some problems we were having. In the area where we park our bikes, it's kind of under the house in an area that has some physical light fixtures like on the wall to light up that area. There was a switch on the wall to turn those lights on. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice to have a motion sensor that every time we rode up with our bikes, if it was dark out, it would turn those lights on automatically and light up the area for us. Seems reasonable. People have been using motion sensors for that kind of stuff for decades. I thought, I'll do it the smart way. So, number one, I thought, I will convert the switch in the wall here to a Caséta switch. Great. So then I can run HomeKit automations to detect motion in this area and trigger that switch to turn on. And the Logitech Circle View camera that I have there has motion control built in. So I thought this will be great. The camera will detect the motion. I'm already running the camera. So here's what happens when you do that. Riding your bike in, the camera detects motion and turns the light on. Now, if I'm honest, the speed at which it turns the light on after detecting motion is kind of variable. Just like, again, think of any home stuff you've ever used. It's always like this, right? Any like smart home stuff, it's like it works in 2 seconds most of the time, but sometimes 5 seconds, and sometimes infinite seconds. It never works, right? So like you never know. It's always very variable, and it's a little bit slow sometimes. So that was problem number one with the Logitech motion sensor setup. Problem number two is that you'd say, all right, when you detect motion, turn the light on for whatever minutes, X minutes, and then turn the light off if there's no more motion. Well, guess what would happen? The light would get turned off, and the camera would say, something has changed, there's motion. Because the difference in picture between the light being on and off was considered by the Logitech Circle View camera to be motion. So it would get into an infinite loop, where it would just keep turning itself on forever. So that was not going to work. So I thought, okay, I have to separate the roles of motion detection and this camera, because obviously that's not going to work. So most motion detectors, I don't think, work in the visible spectrum. I think they're infrared based. So I figure, all right, maybe that's the problem. The camera's doing it optically in the visible spectrum of light. So it's considering this change in illumination to be a big motion event. If I can get any other motion sensor, that probably won't happen. There are HomeKit motion sensors, not many of them. The best reviewed one is by the company Eve. I got the Eve motion sensor, and I've heard Merlin talk about how good their stuff can be, and I even got the Eve Extend because it's in an area, it's like, below the house. It's kind of in a poor Wi-Fi area, and I have since put an access point down there to fix the Wi-Fi, but it's still very far from any kind of Bluetooth reception for any HomeKit hub that might be at my house.
Is this an outdoor motion detector?
Of course it is. No, it's not. It wasn't. But this is an area where it's very covered. Like it's pretty far from the elements.
Have we not been through this before?
No, John. In Marco's, as much as I want to make fun of Marco about this one, apparently it is IPX3 water resistance. Now I have no idea offhand if that's like a droplet or.
All right, well then, so that must be. I mean, unless they think your house is going to have water in it, there's got to be some kind of outdoor thing, right?
No, I mean, like in this particular location, I can use pretty much anything as long as I can tolerate temperature extremes, because it does get pretty cold in the winter. But otherwise, like this, no rain gets to where this is ever.
Condensation. We talked about this before. Condensation is a thing.
Yes, but anyway, so
that's what distinguishes an indoor from an outdoor thing. All right, so go on.
Anyway, so I tried the Eve motion sensor, and it worked occasionally. It's just like every other HomeKit thing. Like it works sometimes, and it was kind of slow to respond, just like the Logitech thing. It's like eventually I decided this is not for me, so I took that back in, and I got the Caséta motion sensor. The Caséta motion sensor is a little bit limited because it's not a HomeKit device, but you can set up automation in the Caséta app that when that sensor detects motion, it will turn on the lights that are in whatever room you say it's in. Night and day difference. So first of all, 100% reliable. Like, it works every single time, and it detects zero false things. It doesn't care at all, like when the light turns off, it doesn't treat that as motion. And best of all, it's so freaking fast. Like, you can ride a bike up into this area as you're still riding the bike, and it turns on in time. For, like, it's so much faster than everything else, because it's kind of like when like your hand touches a hot stove and like your brain doesn't have to process that to say, oh, pull away the hand. Like, it just does it. That's kind of how it's like, that kind of difference where like the HomeKit stuff always felt like, hey, I detected motion, send somebody a memo about it. And then somebody, hey, is that Bob? Is he saying there's motion? Oh, hey, Joe, turn those lights on, and then like, it's like this, but whereas this is just like, boom, motion. Like, it's as if the motion sensor is built into the lights. Like, that's how fast this is. And when you compare it to the HomeKit stuff, oh my God. So anyway, I am just so incredibly happy with Lutron Caséta, and I wanted to tell all of you this in an episode they were not sponsoring, because I want you to really know it's authentic, that it's just so good, it's so reliable, and yeah, the smart outlet situation, it's a little bit limited and pricey, but otherwise, I don't see any major downsides, except for the fact that they only make a certain set of types of things. Like, they don't make thermostats and stuff like that. Obviously you got to go to other things for that. But yeah, for the things they do make, man, they're good. And they are literally the only smart home system that I have found that is reliable and that I don't want to throw out the window after like a month.
I don't want to belabor the point, so I'll just very briefly say that in my experience, I completely agree with you. I think we talked about several times months ago, we put a screened-in porch at the back of the house earlier this year, and we use Caséta switches for the fans there, and then I got a burr or a bee in my bonnet to change all of the switches in the house from the the little like levers that stick out. I believe they're called a toggle switch, to a decorator or rocker switch, which I think looks far more modern and sleeker. And so I switched all of the switches in the house, and only maybe 5 of them I replaced with Caséta switches, not because I didn't want to replace all of them with Caséta stuff, but because it is relatively expensive. Like, you can get really crummy versions of a lot of their stuff for considerably less money, but they don't work.
Yeah, in this case, you very much get what you pay for.
I not agree more.
Like, a dimmer switch from them is what, like $80, something like that? Like,
no, I think it's like 60, which is still a lot of money, don't get me wrong, but it works every time.
Yeah, and that might be 2 times as much as some other weird Wi-Fi thing from Amazon, but I'm telling you, the difference it matters. The difference matters a lot.
Yeah, and I was able to wire these, myself, and I am a very poor homeowner in that I am very bad at all home maintenance things of any sort, but I was able to do it. Some of their smart switches don't require a neutral line. Some of them do, but some of them also do not. I want to say the fan switches required a neutral line, but I don't think regular like on off, or maybe it was the dimmer didn't. Check my work on this, but it is an option for those of you who don't have neutral lines in your boxes. But this stuff is extremely reliable. It works every time, and I think I'm cribbing from Quinn in saying this, but it is incredibly important to have non-smart options. I don't mean a physical switch that then talks to HomeKit to do things. I mean a physical switch that physically switches things. You know what I mean? And that's what the Caséta stuff does, and it's excellent. I would look at Quinn's review, which we'll put a link in the show notes to it. His video review is very good, and he was talking about his smart home in general, so it's not strictly limited to Caséta, but he talks a lot about Caséta and has a lot of the same things to say. So I don't want to belabor it any further, but hard agree. I was overjoyed when we were able to get them to sponsor the show, because it's one of those sponsors. I mean, we love all of our sponsors, but there's some that we really, really love, and this is one of them. So yeah, Lutron Caséta stuff, you get what you pay for. They can run with that.
It's so nice to have stuff be 100% reliable. Oftentimes when we replace some kind of old technology with something that we think is new and better, oftentimes we add coolness and capabilities and convenience at the cost of reliability. A lot of old tech works basically 100% of the time. And it has worked that way for decades. And then we computer guys come in and we're like, hey, we can do this better. And it's like, yeah, but then it doesn't work. Like, yeah. So the smart home stuff is definitely one of those things. And so to have something that literally does work 100% of the time is like game changing.
Yep. Speaking of game changing, let's talk about MacBook Pros.
All right.
So mine arrived on this past Monday, I believe it was. The MacBook Pro seemed to get stuck in, I think it was Shanghai. I might have said Shenzhen last time. It was somewhere in China for a while. Eventually got moving. It went via, I believe, Korea and then Alaska and then Louisville, as UPS shipments are wont to do, and then eventually arrived to me. Actually, a shade earlier than UPS had estimated. I think it was a day earlier than UPS had estimated when it finally got moving again, and it came about midday. And a lot of this, I think, Marco covered last week, so I'm going to try to be brief, but if we end up going off on a tangent, so be it. I want to talk about, I know, right? I want to talk about several things. And let me set, this is probably going to be relevant in a few minutes, but let me set a little bit of expectations. I have, this iMac Pro, I have a 2020 MacBook Pro, and I really, really love both machines. They're really great machines. But the bill of goods that I allowed myself to get sold, which I'm not saying is fact or fiction, I'm just saying this is what I was kind of setting myself up to believe, was that on M1 machines, particularly these new ones, basically everything is instant and you never have to wait for anything ever again. And that is kind of what I expected. I expected this monitor, or screen display, whatever, to be brilliant. And I expected this thing to be a little bit on the chunky side, but overall not too different than what I've got. So with that in mind, physical design, I think the weight, not having measured it and not having looked it up, I think John had looked it up last week, but the weight as compared to my 2020 Intel MacBook Pro seems to be approximately equivalent. I'm sure that is not actually equivalent, but it seems to be about the same. The physical design, I think it's good. I think later on, actually, John had asked in the show notes about how slidey it is. And I hadn't thought about it until I read that in the show notes, but it is a lot more slidey than it was before. I think the material on the feet might be slightly different. So it does shimmy across my glass desk a little easier than the last one did. But I mean, it's not ridiculous. It's just noticeably less tacky, I guess you could say.
I wonder if that was the reason I put this in is because I wondered if it was true. So thanks for confirming. But I also wonder if that's an intentional feature because there's a trade-off with feet on a laptop. You do want them to be grippy, but I have definitely seen people expect to be able to shove their laptop over or even just like rotate it so someone else can see it. And the feet are so tacky that it just doesn't want to do that. So I think there is probably like a balance between making it easy to move your thing around on the surface versus making it secure. Where do you think this falls? Does it obviously feels less tacky, but does it feel insecure? Like you're actually going to knock it off like it's on wheels, or is it just less tacky in comparison?
I would say it's less tacky. Also, again, it's not fair because I use a glass top desk, which is probably more slippy slidey than say like wood or something like that would be.
I mean, it might be less. It might be less slippy slidey depending on if the glass is wet.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if the glass is wet, it's definitely more slippy. And you have a lot of water around your computers a lot. So.
Oh, that's true. I do have a water bottle, but it is capped about 3 inches from the computer as we speak. Nevertheless, I would say I would prefer it to be slightly more tacky, but it's not so slippy that I find it to be bothersome. It's not like the computer's moving when I'm just using it. But if I put really any amount of pressure on it in order to slide it, it will slide. So I'm not saying it's bad. I actually don't have my old laptop near me. It's downstairs, but I would say I would probably prefer it a little bit tackier, but not necessarily as tacky as the old one was. But by no means is it bad. Other than that, the shell of it, as we've talked about, some areas are curvier when maybe they weren't before, or certainly less curvy than they were before. None of this is bad. It's just different. The screen is very, very, very nice. It is very nice. And it is super trippy for me to see the HDR stuff happening because I'm used to seeing that on like a phone when, suddenly the rest of the screen seems to get dim and just the video you're looking at gets super bright. I don't have a problem with it, especially since I'm used to it on the phone, but it is very trippy to see on my Mac. 120 hertz. I wouldn't say I notice it that often, but one place I notice it every time, and it makes me smile every time. And this is I think the equivalent of me saying that the animations like, maybe not zooming, but, zooming in and out of an app on my phone. The equivalent to that on this computer is spaces, going between spaces. So I'm as we've talked many times, a devout spaces user. This is like virtual desktops. And as I slide laterally back and forth between spaces, it is buttery smooth and it makes me very happy. Other than that, I can't say I've really noticed a lot where 120 hertz seems obvious. And honestly, my eye is not stupendous for this. But there are definitely times where I'm like, oh, that is very smooth, and it makes me very happy. I have much more to say, but Marco, do you want to jump in on this particular point, or are you good for
on the 120 hertz? But
yes.
So it's interesting. I mean, so just to set the stage here, I've been looking at these screens a lot over the last week because what happened, I know I breezed over this a little bit earlier, but what happened is I decided to go ahead with the plan to replace my desktop with a high-powered laptop. And it became a 16-inch, but we'll get to that later. So I spent most of the last week setting up two of these right next to each other on my desk. So I still had the Mac Mini as my main computer, like connected to the big XDR, and then I had off to my right the MacBook Air that I was transferring some data from. Migration Assistant failed, which has been happening to a lot of people with the MacBook Airs, and there's occasionally some way to like dive into something or other and try to fix it with system integrity protection and all this other stuff. But I decided not to do that. So I'm setting up both as new. And because I have operated for so long as a right mouse, left trackpad user, my left hand can use a trackpad just fine. And so I spent most of the last week with one laptop on the left hand, one laptop on the right hand, trying to do stuff in parallel as much as possible. Like install this, install that, click here, click there. Like doing it on both laptops. So I was setting them up together, which was kind of fun. And my desk looked ridiculous, like just covered in computers. It was glorious. But all this going back to the point you actually asked. So I've looked at these screens a lot in the last week, and when I go back to my poor 60 hertz XDR, I literally don't notice. I don't know what it is. Maybe it's that I'm just not seeing a lot of apps that use it. And now that you say Safari doesn't use 120 hertz yet, that's a pretty big thing. Like I've been looking at a lot of Safari recently, like, going to websites of apps that I have to download and trying to find the download link that they've buried God knows where. It's a lot of scrolling and hitting Command F download and stuff like that. So anyway, I honestly am not noticing 120 hertz as much as I thought I would, which is, in my opinion, a blessing, because I still have my giant monitor that I have no intention of replacing anytime soon, nor is there anything to replace it with that would support 120 hertz at anywhere near this size and resolution. So this is going to be one of those things where I'm just going to be blissfully happy that I don't seem to notice it much on the Mac, and that I can be happy using it without that on my desktop.
Yeah, I mean, I think so far I mostly agree with you that it's not terribly noticeable, but I wonder once like Safari starts supporting it, if maybe my perspective will change. Moving right along, MagSafe. Wait, actually, hold on a second. You were setting up both the computers, so you're going to use the 16 as a desktop replacement and the 14 as a runaround computer?
Yes, I'm on the 16 right now, talking to you as my desktop laptop.
Oh my god! And
the 14 is my around the house computer.
So what 16 build did you get?
The one that was in stock.
Which was what, a max with 2 terabytes and 64 gigs?
No, the 16 came with 4, so it's max everything, right?
Yeah, it's 4 terabyte, 64 gigs, and the max CPU.
Well, you could get 8 terabytes for like $11 billion, I thought.
Not in store, you can't.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
That's a lot of machine. Don't get me wrong. That is a lot of machine. And so you went and picked it up. You reserved it, right? And picked it up in store?
Yeah, I did. Because It was like I was going to the mainland for some grocery shopping and stuff last Thursday. And so literally like I edited the show that morning. And, while Logic was bouncing, I went and reserved one at the nearby Apple store. And then I bounced it, got in the shower, got on a boat, got in a car, did the whole, cars, trucks, boats, trains, whatever it was, to get there. And and got my laptops. It feels really extravagant to have bought 2 at the same time. But I am very happy I did, because as I mentioned earlier, I really did consider only having the desktop laptop as a new one and keeping my M1 Air as my around the house one. And truthfully, that would be fine for almost all conditions, except I do intend to do some pretty heavy video capture stuff on it, where there's going to be like 3 different cameras, 3 different computers being captured, like many streams coming in, a lot of throughput. And so I figure like having a beefier system that has more GPU power and more I/O, like Thunderbolt throughput, I thought would be beneficial to that. Plus, not to mention more disk space and more RAM, which would also be a very big deal at some point. So I decided let me actually upgrade all of them. But honestly, the desktop laptop, I'm 100% confident that was the right move because 64 gigs of RAM is awesome. It's so good to be back to this because I think that's what my iMac Pro had for the years I used that. So to go from 64 for a few years to 16 and now back to 64, I feel it. I feel that difference a lot. Bouncing between apps. I know there was a YouTube video that says they couldn't tell. I can tell. And with my workload, I have a lot of very RAM-hungry apps. Sometimes I'm running more than one at a time, or switching between very RAM-hungry apps. Like now, when I switch between Xcode and Logic, like it doesn't bring everything to a crawl for a few seconds. Like it's really nice. It might even be able to run Swift UI. So.
I want to talk about that YouTube video, by the way, because a lot of people have asked about that. Like, they just did a bad job testing something that uses a lot of memory. It's like there's no magic in these machines. We talked about this before. There is nothing particularly magical about the ARM-based Macs that makes them magically not need more RAM. Like I mentioned when we first talked about this, months ago. If anything, it's potentially possible for the code size of Intel binaries to be smaller because Intel CPUs have variable size instructions, whereas ARM, being RISC CPUs, have instructions that are all the same size. So in theory, the code portion of your application that's in memory could take up more room on ARM. Now, granted, you don't have to deal with 32 and 64, but that's also not true in Intel anymore. Anyway, the whole point is with the RAM thing, if you test an application that doesn't particularly stress the memory system, like, oh, maybe it uses more than 16, but not much more, yeah, you probably won't notice that much of a difference. But if you use an application that really requires like 128 gigs of RAM, and you start swapping, which means not just pushing things into virtual memory or how much swap is used, but swapping means the program is constantly putting things into the swap file on quote unquote disk and taking them out and putting them in and taking them out. That's swapping. That's an activity. It's a verb. It is not a measurement of how much swap space is used. That's not relevant. So if you see some YouTube video that says, oh, we tried a 16 gig machine and a 32 one, and there was like 2-second difference between them, they're just doing a bad test. It's not stressing the memory. Now, if that's the thing you want to do, then yeah, you don't need more memory because the thing you want to do doesn't require more memory. But some people do things that really does require more memory. One of the ones from the Apple keynote that they mentioned, I think it was brought up on the upgrade interview with the guys from Apple, that one of the files they opened in like the intro video for this, you can't even open that file on a machine without like 64 gigs of RAM or whatever, because this was a VRAM thing, because basically it's unified memory and you can't buy a video card with 64 gigs of VRAM on a laptop. Therefore, the only way to ever open this file on a laptop is to have a laptop with quote unquote 64 gigs of VRAM because it's unified RAM and it's accessible by the GPU. But anyway, sometimes people really, really do need more RAM. And then you will notice the difference. Not just, oh, I couldn't open the file, but you will actively be swapping, and you can see that activity if you look at the VMstat or whatever the equivalent tools are on macOS. So, be aware of what your use case is. Do you need more RAM? And that memory pressure thing of being like, oh, it's yellow or red or whatever, that's not the best thing. What you want to tell is like, hey, if I do this, if I do the activity that I want to do on a machine with more RAM, how much faster is it? And that's what they measured, but the things they measured, those tasks obviously didn't need more RAM, and apparently Marco does.
Yeah, like it's great. The only thing is there's actually a few people in my family and friends who need a computer, so I actually might give away the Air to one of them. But I really love that MacBook Air, the M1 MacBook Air. I absolutely love that computer. And I'm kind of sad to have replaced it. Like in the sense that this new 14-inch MacBook Pro is really nice, but it doesn't give me that love feeling that the M1 MacBook Air does. And maybe that's because the M1 MacBook Air is that fun, like weird, like orangey pinkish color, and the MacBook Pro only comes in boring gray. By the way, so Tiff got her 16-inch in as well, to the stake through Casey's heart in the delivery timing, and so we set that up as well. And she has space gray, and I have silver. They did not make a space gray MagSafe plug or MagSafe cord, and it looks weird.
Oh, come on. It's
we
not
talked
that
about
bad.
This last
we did
week.
talk about this.
I know,
last
but
week.
you're on that show.
But like now I've actually seen them in person. Like MagSafe looks perfect with the silver metal, and the MagSafe does not look right. It looks like it's the wrong cable. It looks like you borrowed someone else's cable when you see it against the space gray. It looks wrong. Both the color of the metal and the color of the cord are both noticeably too light for the space gray laptop. And I would also go as far as to say, having seen both now in my house, I think silver looks better. Because not only does MagSafe look better, far and away better, I think, with silver, but now that they've moved to a higher contrast design, now that the keyboard tray kind of area is all black, you have the nice black rectangle of that, plus the black rectangle of the screen, against like the metal backdrop of the surrounding material. I think the higher contrast of the silver model looks nicer overall compared to the space gray, which I think looks a little bit old, like a little bit dated, and is lower contrast with the hardware, and the MagSafe looks wrong.
I mean, I'm obviously biased because I did order a space gray. I don't think anything you've said is necessarily wrong. I just don't find it nearly as bothersome as you seem to. And yeah, I guess the MagSafe cable does look a little bit off, but it's not something that I notice on a day-to-day basis. Now, maybe you do or others would, but to me, it's not that noticeable. But that is a perfect segue to talk about MagSafe, which I wanted to talk about next.
Yeah.
Something I noticed about it is that when you, I don't know how to describe this, but like when you peel it in order to remove it, so you're like putting your finger under it and peeling it upwards.
You're talking about the sandwich closing force again, aren't you?
Yeah, I guess so.
This is more sandwich opening force, really.
Yeah,
Yes,
I guess one way or another. When you're doing the sandwich opening or closing force, it doesn't take that much to get it to pop. However,
no, you have the opposite. The sandwich closing force is the one where it's hard, where you're pulling straight in the line of the cord. Right.
Okay, well that's what I was going to say. I don't care what you guys want to call them. Peeling is easy, pulling is hard. That's what it boils down to.
This is the same as it's always been on MagSafe forever.
It's much stronger now, though.
Yeah.
I see. That's what I was going to say. I think it's very strong. Like to pull straight out from the cable, which I know I'm not supposed to do. I'm just saying it to illustrate a point. To pull directly out by the cable is very, very difficult. In fact, the computer wants to move much before the cable wants to get.
I think there's a good reason for that too. Like, so the big change with this MagSafe is it's just much narrower. Like it's like the size of a USB-C port, right? Whereas before it was tall. In fact,
I wouldn't say that. It's like 1.5 to 2 times the size of a USB-C port.
Go get MagSafe 1. I don't know if you remember how tall MagSafe 1 was. I think MagSafe 1 was taller than USB-A, wasn't it?
Oh, you're talking about tall. I'm sorry.
Right. So with the force that you're talking about, the easy one where you like yank upwards or downwards, or well, I guess just upwards and downwards I'm talking about, right? You have to make that like sturdy enough that doesn't come off all the time. This is the complaint people have with all the MagSafe. That like if you have it on your bed and like your covers hit the thing upwards and it comes off, right? So you have to make that sturdy. But the problem is the magnets have this little skinny area to oppose that force, right? If you imagine the MagSafe was 6 inches tall, that's a pretty big lever. If you put a pretty weak magnet on top and pretty weak magnet on bottom and then try to tilt that, the lever made by those distant points and the sort of the pivot point represented by the cord. Is this making sense to you? There's like a physics reason that the skinnier you make the plug, the more powerful you have to make the magnets to maintain a minimum amount of up-down sturdiness, right? Mm-hmm. So I feel like to make that up-down yanking sturdiness the amount that you want it to be, you have to use such strong magnets that when you try to directly oppose them by pulling directly out of the laptop, it's way harder than it used to be because the thing got skinnier. That's my theory.
That makes sense.
I would even say, like, I think MagSafe is now a misnomer. And I think it was also a misnomer when they brought it to the phone. I think they used the name because it was an old name that people liked, but the phone charging puck, nothing about that is necessarily safe. Like I think the use of the word safe doesn't really make a lot of sense there. Like I don't think MagSafe charging on the phone is safer than cable charging.
It's kind of the same of like if you walk by your phone and you trip across the cord, you won't yank your phone off the counter anymore. It's that type of thing.
But you probably will. But anyway, so with this, I think the original safety benefit of MagSafe, of tripping over the cord, not pulling your laptop off, back then MagSafe was easier to pull off and laptops were heavier. And now, I could easily I could easily pull this across the desk by the MagSafe cable.
I think you could always drag a laptop by MagSafe, but the whole point is when someone trips over it, they never or almost never pull at exactly the right angle. If you're off axis by even a little bit, it disconnects with any.
I'm
going to
test this. I'm going to grab my finger here. All right, yeah. So if you kick it, it does pop off, but I think it's less safe than ever. Like, if that makes sense. Like I think
I think it might be more safe than ever because the thing is so skinny, and because your yanking force is always going to be a little bit down. Unless the cord, because like who plugs in their laptop where the cord goes straight from the laptop at the same level to the keyboard? Like, it's probably always going to go down. And because the thing is so skinny, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure Apple has done these tests, but the bottom line is they were constrained by both the width of the laptop and the width of their future laptop plans, like the M2 MacBook Air that's going to be super skinny and will probably have this port on it. They had to make it super thin. And that means that it's always going to be really easy to yank even slightly upward or slightly downwards. There's only unless they use an electromagnet, like we're just using, permanent rare earth magnets in that small a space, they're probably near the limit of how maybe not near the limit because they have pretty powerful magnets, but they're probably near the practical limit for how powerful they can make those magnets. And still, I think any kind of slightly upward or downward motion's got to get that thing disconnected.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I think it is when they introduced MagSafe for the phone, I think they should have given it a new name and then use that same name for this. Anyway.
In any case, I do like having MagSafe back quite a lot, although it is a bit of a double-edged sword in that I've now sprinkled like USB-C power connectors around my house, and not that I can't use them, but now I kind of want to have MagSafe everywhere, except that my iPad doesn't take MagSafe. So it's like, I don't know what I'm going to do about this. And one example of this is I have one of them kind of like barfing out of my couch, if you will. And generally speaking, I would want to be able to have the flexibility of USB-C so I could plug in either my iPad or my computer. However, that is like prime candidate for MagSafe, because if there's ever a time that something's going to get yanked, it's in the living room, especially with the kids running around. So I don't know what I'm going to do, but if this is the problem I have, I will take this over not even having the option of MagSafe. So I'm still happy. The braided cable or whatever this is, I've only had it for a couple of days, but so far I love it. It is the right amount of flexible and the right amount of sturdy or stiff. Really, really digging this. And now I kind of want to have all my lightning cables made out of this, which I think there is a braided lightning cable or something like that. But nevertheless, I'm really digging that.
That's what I talked about when I got my Mac Pro. Remember, I wanted all my cables to be black and braided. Yeah, they're much nicer.
Yep. And I will probably, I suspect, pick up one or two more of these USB-C to MagSafe ends, even at $50, which is, I think, what they cost.
Yep.
But I kind of want to have one or two stationary in the house, and then probably one in my laptop bag for when I travel. So I suspect I'll be buying at least one more of them. Battery life, similar to my expectation setting from earlier. My expectations were that the battery lasts forever and you can never even get it below 100%. That is not true. You can get it below 100%. I haven't done extensive testing with this, but it definitely seems like this is a multi-hour battery, which I know sounds preposterous, but as much as I do love my Intel MacBook Pro, I could only realistically get 2 to 3 hours when I'm doing like reasonably heavy development work. And I've only done a little of that development work on this computer, and we'll talk about that in a second, but it definitely seems like I'm going to get considerably more battery life than my Intel MacBook Pro, which is very welcome, and I'm very excited about it. And even if this was heavier than my Intel MacBook Pro, I would absolutely make that trade-off. Give me a heavier computer and give me more battery life. Absolutely. The keyboard does feel different. I don't know if it's just because it's a fresher keyboard. I don't know what it is about it. And I've been racking my brain trying to figure out a way to describe this, and I just don't have the words for it. But it feels, I think, almost ever so slightly mushier, which is a negative thing, but in a good way, which I understand the words that are coming out of my mouth make no sense, and I'm sorry. But something about it is it feels a little bit nicer, and I'm gonna have to see if I can, follow up in a week or two and put words to it, but it's not night and day different by any means, but I definitely like it, and it definitely feels really good. Some
people were saying that it might have had more travel. That seems like something you could measure, especially if Marco still got his old crappy 16-inch around.
Yeah, I do. I'm actually keeping, so the 16-inch was Tiff's computer until this new 16 came in for her, and I'm planning on keeping the 16 Intel for a while as my last Intel test machine. Because it's a laptop, so it's self-contained, has its own screen and everything, so that's nice for test machine purposes. And I feel like again, like as a now I'm a Mac developer for multiple products now. I have Forecast and Quitter, I guess, but mainly for Forecast for Intel. So I do have occasional needs for Mac test machines, and so I figure I'll keep this Intel one around for a while.
Did you have any thoughts about the keyboard, Marco, before I move on?
I don't think so, except the change to black for the background tray of the keyboard. It does make the keys harder to spot. Like functionally, it does not work as well as like a keyboard visual thing. However, I find it to be a very minor thing, and so I don't care really about that. I do love the new full height Touch ID key and the new full height function keys. They're really nice. Touch ID also just seems faster. I don't know why, but it seems way faster on this than the Intels. And finally, the different look of the keyboard, mostly in regards to the black background thing, are one difference that instantly makes the previous outgoing 16-inch model look old by comparison. Like as I've been using the 16-inch like to transfer TIFF stuff over in the last couple of days to her new computer, the keyboard background being silver and the touch bar both make it look like a dinosaur by comparison. Like that, you wouldn't think it would be such a big difference because like the new machines don't look that different from the old machines, but in those ways they do, and that I noticed instantly.
That's kind of funny.
Also, good riddance to the touch bar. My God, does that thing suck?
I do miss it. I do miss it for tapbacks and messages, but that is literally the only time. I want to go back to the Touch ID briefly. I couldn't tell you if it's faster or not, but I will say, and this sounds kind of bananas, but it really has made a huge difference to me. Having a little bit of ridge in it, or maybe it's actually not a depression. Is that the word I'm looking for? A little cavey area. It's inset slightly.
On the Touch ID button specifically, you mean?
Yes, yeah. Exactly. I really like having that so that I can place my finger appropriately on the button, because the Intel one, it's just like like a completely blank keycap. And so it feels different than the other keycaps, but it's still just one big flat area. And having the circle in there helps me center my finger appropriately, and I think it makes it more accurate.
Yeah. The Intel one, it looks like they forgot to design it. The CSS failed to load or something.
Well, it's supposed to look like it's part of the touch bar. That's why it's featureless, because the touch bar is featureless when it's not turned on. And so to make the same reason the stupid escape key doesn't exist in the first ones, right? And it was just part of the screen. But the Touch ID is supposed to just look like more touch bar, so no features.
Yeah.
The speakers on this are really good for a laptop, like really, really good, surprisingly good. And I never thought the Intel ones were particularly bad, but these are really, really good, and you get way more bass out of these than you would expect. Now, it's not going to replace a regular sound system by any stretch, but in a pinch, I think it's definitely sufficient, if not more than sufficient, for any reasonable use, and I was very impressed by them. The SD card reader. I think you ran into something similar to this, Marco. So I was using the SD card reader on the device to go through my photos the way I like to do it, which I know you guys hate, and, look at each file on this SD card and decide what I want to keep and what I want to delete before I import them into Photos. Yes, I understand that's bananas, but it's the way I like to do it. Leave me alone. And so I was trying to do all this in Finder, and I was getting constant beach balls, like all the time. I was rebooting. I was quitting Finder constantly. I don't know if it was a fluke. I only tried it the one time, so I don't know if it was, bad internet weather, except not the internet, bad computing weather. I don't know what was going on, but Marco, you said you had something with like external drives or something like that, so maybe this is related? I don't know, but it was very weird and very frustrating.
Yeah, I'm currently tracking some issues, and I even ended up filing a bug report with Apple with sysdiagnosis and everything. The generic like $20 USB enclosure for SSDs that I use, like regular 2.5-inch SATA enclosure, that seems to have problems with these new Macs. Now, I was trying to isolate. It might not be a problem with the new Macs specifically. It might be a problem with Monterey.
Mm-hmm.
Once I upgraded my MacBook Air to Monterey, it has the same problem, or a similar one, whereas the Mac Mini that has not been upgraded, that's still running Big Sur, but is also M1, does not have this problem. So it seems to be maybe a problem with M1 series chips and Big Sur combined, or maybe it's a problem with all of Big Sur. I don't know. But
you mean Monterey?
Sorry, Monterey. God, California has too many places. Anyway, it's a big state.
It's a big state.
Yeah. So anyway. there's something going on with these machines / Monterey and USB 3 storage devices. If you use a cable that is USB-C but does not transmit USB 3 speeds, like conveniently Apple's charging cable from all of their most recent laptops except these. Like if you have an Apple USB-C to C 2-meter charging cable that comes with pretty much every Apple laptop made between 2016 and right before these came out, that cable is USB 2.0 data speeds, but has USB-C connectors on both ends. If I connect the drive enclosure with that, it does work without any problems. It's slow as crap, and you realize quite how good USB 3 is compared to USB 2, but it does work. So there's something up with that. I hope, because this seems to have come on with Monterey and also seems to apply to the old M1s, but they didn't have this problem before this, I would assume this is a software problem, not a hardware problem. And so hopefully we'll see a Monterey update sometime very soon that fixes, USB device connectivity or whatever. It seems to not apply to USB 2.0 devices or to anything that is like Thunderbolt or otherwise like not USB.
Yeah, it was very, very wonky, and I did not enjoy it by any means. But I agree that it seems to me like it would be a software thing, but who really knows? Speed. So again, I was sold by me to me a bill of goods that this thing would load everything instantly always. And I think that's true with asterisks. Certain things, it definitely feels like it's churning on something or trying to do something. I mentioned, I think briefly earlier, that when I installed Xcode via the App Store, which maybe that was my first problem, but one way or another, it took literally like an hour or something like that. I didn't measure it, but it felt like a long, long time. However, in starting Xcode once it's been installed does take a few seconds. Like you see the Xcode icon bounce a couple of times. But one thing that blew my freaking mind was every time I open the simulator, like from a cold start, the simulator has been fully quit. There are no simulator windows open. It is not actively running. Going from that to the simulator displaying my app is preposterously fast. Hilariously, preposterously, ridiculously fast. And it is so cool, and it makes me so happy. Now, granted, I don't cold start simulator that often, but even just getting the simulator to come up, with the latest version of my app, that is also preposterously fast and makes me extremely happy. I've rebooted a bunch of times, including about 15 times when I installed Audio Hijack. That also happens very quickly, which I like. And something that everyone else has talked about for 6 months or a year now, but I am just now experiencing for the first time, when you go ahead and switch displays, it is instant. And after 30 years of waiting for flash, black, not black, black again, not black, black again. Oh, there it is. It is amazing. It is so cool that this happens so quickly, and it makes me extremely happy.
Yeah, I know that somebody must have put a ton of work into like the display driving, whatever does that. It's so awesome. And this applies to the M1s as well, as you said, like it plugging in and disconnecting monitors or opening and closing the screen lid to have things just instantly pop into the new place and the new configuration is so cool. And again, it's one of those things like we've been trained for decades into thinking, I guess that can't happen. I guess it's too complicated to have that. Like we never even thought to expect better things in this area. And when you're given better things, all of a sudden in an area you didn't even think you could get them, it's really delightful. And that's one of the great things about the M1 series computers.
Yep, completely agree. A couple of funny things that I think were more to do with having a brand new computer than anything else. I lost all of my group chat images in messages. So if you recall, for group iMessages, you can set like a name that's shared across all the participants and a icon that's shared across all the participants. And the names seem to have persisted, but the icons, because in a few cases I set custom icons and they've disappeared, which is kind of annoying. Also, I'm constantly getting barraged with like, oh, Casey Liss has a new photo for you. Oh, Marco Arment has a new photo for you, like incessantly, and I don't really know what that's about.
Yeah, I've been getting barraged with that since they introduced that feature. Just yesterday, it's like a routine matter of course. I just look at the messages window and it says, do you want to update the photo for this contact? I'm like, for the 8,000th time, no. I think it's because like you can set a preference that says, do you want to offer your photo to other people that you message with so that they can use it? If you set that, I think you're kind of at the mercy, like on the receiving end, you're at the mercy of other people who may be setting up a new account on a computer or something, or whatever makes the offer come to you. You have no control over whether you will receive the offer or not. And it doesn't apparently remember that you had rejected the offer from this person. It's just that, this person came online and their computer wants to offer it. So you get the pleasure of hitting that little X and rejecting it again.
Yep. Another thing that I thought was quite funny was that I think I was talking with Mike Hurley, and he replied to an image that he had sent a few days ago before this computer was in my hands. And the way messages rendered that was just a little teeny black box. Because, legitimately, I don't have messages in the cloud turned on. And so it legitimately had no way of knowing what that image was he was replying to, because it happened long before my user had ever signed into this computer. But I felt like it was a failure mode that was a little ridiculous. It reminded me of the old Netscape, like image broken icon, but it was just a black box. And I was supposed to just divine what was being replied to.
Why don't you have messages in the cloud turned on?
Because early on it was terrible, so I remember. And it was some Slack that I think we're all in was just talking about this, and somebody else said it's not terrible anymore. So I probably should turn it on.
It's less bad than it was, but it's still pretty terrible. But a slightly inconsistent, terrible, laggy, slow syncing mechanism that constantly re-scrolls you to a new position in the scroll back is better than nothing at all. Because with nothing at all, it's like, well, some messages are on some device and some messages are on other devices. So.
Well, see, that's the thing. It's been pretty rock solid for me without messages in the cloud. Oh, yeah, and doesn't messages in the cloud give Apple your encryption key or something like that? That was the other thing.
Yeah, it's totally less secure, but I was like, that's a valid answer. It's like, I didn't want to turn on messages in the cloud because I don't want Apple seeing my messages, but, that's not what you said. So I don't know if you have secret messages.
Well, but that is a small part of it. It was mostly because I heard it was garbage, and then also because it's marginally less secure.
It is better than it was, but like, boy, maybe it's just on Mac messages. Like, you do have the button that you can do sync now, which is great. But if you don't do that and you're like scrolling through a scroll back to look at something, expect that at any point the program will decide, I've done something related to sync, and now I've decided your scroll back position is going to be offset by a few thousand pixels. Enjoy. And then you'll scroll back and find where you were and start reading again, and then it will just move back again. It's
that's
bad.
True. So for grins and giggles, I decided to think about what would I do if I wanted to keep this as my primary machine, which is I think what I want to do. And I want to have a monitor for it, which I don't have. So I tried using my OG, like literally from the Kickstarter Luna display, which thankfully I had gotten when my Adorable was my runaround computer. So it was USB-C. The Luna display is very good. I think they may have sponsored once or twice in the past. I don't remember. It is very, very good. However, even over Ethernet, powering the 5K over the Luna display is not exactly delightful because there's so many compression artifacts, and especially like I tried using Xcode, and every time I scroll the Xcode window, like all the text gets garbly and gross looking, and then you wait a beat, and then it all comes back in nice and crisp because it stopped moving. It's not great.
Yeah, you're asking a lot of that.
Oh, absolutely, without a shadow of doubt. The Luna display I think was mostly meant for running on an iPad, right? So what Sidecar is now. And it wasn't, I don't think, really designed to handle this. And it wouldn't surprise me if my hardware is old and there's probably new hardware now. But one way or another, it did work. Don't get me wrong. It absolutely worked, but it was not super delightful. So I wish target display mode was a thing, but it is not. So I don't think we're going to have time today, but I would like very much to whine about the piss poor state of Apple monitors because I have ordered an LG 5K from Apple that might deliver this year because I don't know what else to do.
Oh no.
I don't know what else to do.
Here's what you do. You swallow your pride. You order the XDR and you never tell anybody.
Oh my God. I don't think I can handle it. I don't think I can.
Don't get it. It's not a good time to buy an XDR. I endorse the 5K plan, assuming you can resell it at some point in the future, because honestly, we don't know what the schedule is for Apple ever releasing anything better, but I wouldn't buy an XDR now.
See, thank you, John. I agree. If I was spending your money, I would have had an XDR yesterday, but I'm spending my money, which is why I don't have an XDR. By the way, have I mentioned atp.fm/store? Thank you very much. And then finally, the only Mac OS, or I guess iOS on Mac OS Catalyst app that I've installed is indeed Overcast, because I was doing my normal thing where I put my iPhone in like a 12 South dock or whatever it is I have on my desk, and I was starting to play, I think it was Upgrade actually, the aforementioned episode of Upgrade. And I started playing, and I was, wait a second. I don't have to do this. I can just run it on my Mac.
I can have a mediocre experience scrolling the iPad app on my Mac.
That's exactly right. And actually, well, that's not even fair. It was a very nice experience, and it all worked really well until I tried to hit a media key on the keyboard, and it was like, what? Nope, that doesn't work. Play pause? I don't know what that is. And that was a bit of a bummer. So I got to talk to the developer and see if I can convince him or her to add media key support, because that would be super awesome.
You mean convince them to do literally anything to the app to make it aware that it's running on a Mac?
That's exactly right.
I don't think I have access to those keys in that environment. Like maybe because it isn't a Catalyst app. It's like a iOS Mac app, and Catalyst might have hooks into that kind of stuff. But and one of the reasons I haven't made a Catalyst app is that once you do that, then you have to have a whole separate entry in the Mac App Store for your app and maintain that and, submit it separately, like have all these separate builds. And that's a lot of overhead for what has proven to be, not no users, but not a lot of users. Like not a lot of people are using Overcast on their Macs. And of course that will grow like, as more people use them, like obviously that will, as more people have these machines that can run it, then more people will run it. But it's not a huge number. That being said, according to my analytics that I run, it is climbing quickly over the last couple of weeks, or over the last week rather.
Who would have thunk it? So anyway, so far so good. I'm really looking forward to, well, I might have mentioned this last week, but I was going to say I'm really looking forward to taking this somewhere like, a patio somewhere or somewhere where I can work outside and not have to worry about my battery all the time. But it's freaking freezing here now. So now that I have my wonderful new laptop, my portable desktop that I can take places, I can't really take it anywhere because everywhere's freezing and I'm still allergic to the indoors. Although, random follow-up, Declan has his first shot appointment in a little over a week, and I'm super excited about that. So at that point, it'll be,
Adam does too.
Yeah, at that point, it'll be 3 down, 1 to go. So, and for you guys, you'll be all in, which will be great. So, in any case, this is an incredibly nice machine. I spent a preposterous amount of money on it, and I probably over-ordered on it. Like, I probably didn't need 64 gigs of RAM. I think I stand by my 4 terabytes, but I probably didn't need the max. I probably could have been just fine with the Pro and 32 gigs of RAM, but so far, so freaking good. And outside of my big monitor problems, I really, really, really love this computer, and I'm so happy it's here.
Thanks to our sponsors this week, Squarespace, Linode, and Stripe. And thanks to our members who support us directly. You can join at atp.fm/join. We will talk to you next week.
Now the show is over, they didn't even mean to begin, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. John didn't do any research, Marco and Casey wouldn't let him, 'cause it was accidental. Oh, it was accidental. And you can find the show notes at atp.fm. And if you're into Twitter, you can follow them at CASEYLISS. So that's Casey Liss, MARCOARMENT, Marco Arment, SIRAC, USA Syracuse. It's accidental. They didn't mean to. Accidental. Tech podcast so long.
So related to this computer, and potentially being my one and only computer, excepting my Mac Mini server, which we're not talking about, I have now not right now, but soon I will have an iMac Pro that I should probably get rid of, and an Intel MacBook Pro that I should probably get rid of. I think I am going to unload both of them. There's a slim chance I might hand the MacBook Pro to Erin because she's still on the Adorable, but she uses it so infrequently that I really don't think she'd need the MacBook Pro. Like, I think if anything, it being bigger and heavier would probably not even make her happy. So I'm going to talk to her about it and see what she thinks, but she'll probably just stick with the Adorable. So I'll have this Intel MacBook Pro to get rid of and probably the iMac Pro to get rid of. I've not really done this, but a couple of times, Marco. So I had some questions for you. Let me just rattle off the questions because they're all pretty quick, and then you can kind of answer them in whatever order you see fit. First of all, do you, and again, save your answers for a second here. Do you typically include accessories? So for the MacBook Pro, well, all things being equal, I'd probably just hoard the power supply and USB-C cable. But on the flip side of that, if I was buying a new MacBook Pro, I'd probably want those things. So like, what do you do with that? Does the fact that both of these have active AppleCare Plus things, does that matter? Do I take that into account in the pricing, or do I just say that that's an advantage to make the products seem more lucrative? And then more than anything else, how do you price these? Because I did like a little bit of spelunking on eBay, and I came up with some numbers that I'm not sure if they're realistic or not. And my recollection is that what you would do, and I'm going to shut up in a second and let you actually answer it. What you would do is you would look at eBay and basically like discount a few $100 or something like that. And so I've had a couple of people reach out and kind of kick the tires on each of these machines. So I don't think I necessarily need to go to eBay. I certainly don't want to go to Apple because those trade-in values are not great. But, you know, if these couple of interested parties end up falling through, like my plan was to just post to Twitter and be like, hey, you know, first one to pee on it, so to speak, is the winner. So it was,
please don't post
I'm
that.
not going to post that. But what is your advice and your approach to unloading not very old and still very nice computers?
So, you know, it depends on a lot of factors, you know, and it's very much like trading in old cars, you know, like if you do the trade-in route, like to the dealer, you know, if you do the Apple trade-in, you will get the worst price, but the least hassle and the least risk, you know, so
right.
that is a really good option if there's something kind of flaky or wrong with it, in the sense that like you don't necessarily want to sell it to somebody who you know and who knows you in some way, whether that's like somebody on Twitter or an eBay person or whatever. Like, you don't want to be personally responsible for it if it's a little bit flaky or broken. So if there's anything kind of wrong with it, trade it in and take the hit. Also, if you just want to be quickly done with it, or if it's going to be a big pain, and this might be something like, you know, if shipping, it's going to be really problematic. Like, you know, if it's something that's big and heavy and hard to ship, you know, well/affordably, like a Mac Pro Tower, for instance, like those are,
or an iMac Pro.
Oh yeah, or an iMac. Like those are like larger, more expensive to ship. I remember, the last time when I sold a Mac Pro Tower years ago, I remember it cost like $150 to ship it. Like that was like it was a big chunk out of its value just for shipping, and that was because I had saved the original box. Like if you don't have the shipping box for some of these things, it's even more because then you have to buy shipping boxes and you know, padding and stuff like that. So anyway. So trading in is good in the sense that you don't have to worry about any of that stuff. Like if you do a trade-in to Apple, they will send you packaging material. Like they mail you an empty box with padding, you stick the computer in it, and you send it back.
Oh, quick aside about that. A listener, and I don't have their name handy, but a listener wrote in to say they were looking to trade in their John style, what is it, 2019? Whatever.
That's right.
Mac Pro.
Yeah, the current giant Mac Pro.
And apparently Apple was not at all prepared for this because they sent them a box that was clearly meant for the trash can Mac Pro, which I just thought was hilarious.
You can't even fit the monitor stand in that box.
No.
Yep.
The monitor. Remember how big the monitor stand box is, Marco? I talked about it when I got mine. I'm sure you noticed when you got yours. The monitor stand box is huge.
Yeah, actually, I just moved it yesterday because I was rearranging the basement a little bit, and there it is. It's massive and heavy, even without the stand in it. So for selling on eBay and stuff, eBay is a great chance to be pretty much guaranteed a buyer. It might not be the best buyer. It might not be the most profitable buyer. You're going to have people saying, hey, can you maybe ship it, you know, to this, you know, remote island I live on that's going to be a pain in the butt for you, and you got to fill out a million customs forms because it's like 4 countries away. Like, no, you don't want to do any of that. You want, like, if you go on eBay, keep it simple, say continental US only, and, you know, do shipping at cost because they'll calculate it all for you. The good thing about eBay is that you will get a buyer, like on pretty much anything, unless you like grossly overprice the starting bid. But for the most part, you will get a buyer. And the eBay app is surprisingly good. What I would suggest, like back, you know, not too long ago, if you were to sell something on eBay, you'd probably do it similar to the way I used to do it, which is like, all right, take out the good camera, get out like, the light box to like get really good photos of the object and dust it off, get all perfect, like get no speck of dust on it anywhere, take the pictures, import it into Lightroom, boost them up, get the contrast nice. Oh, there's a speck of dust. Clone stamp that out so you don't see the dust in the pictures. Like really a lot of effort going into it. And then you go on, you make a really nice description and everything. I would suggest throw all of that expectation away and just use the app on your iPad. And maybe even on your phone if you want to, but iPad is fine too. You get a little more space with like to look at things like pictures and text and stuff on the iPad, so it's nicer. But just use the built-in camera and don't use any fancy lighting or fancy photo setup or anything. Set the item on a table, dust it off, in a quick way, and use the eBay app and the built-in camera in the eBay app to take 5 or 6 photos all around it. And then you can look up and you can say, all right, it's this model computer. Here's a description, and type in, approximate description, plain text. Put in no effort into your listing except a handful of iPhone/iPad photos and a quick text description. That's all you need. And what this does is it makes it really easy for you, the seller, which means you're more likely to do it, and it's less hassle and time for you. Then, when the thing actually gets sold, like now that people can buy it directly on eBay and check out on eBay, you don't have to deal with like PayPal or anything like that anymore. eBay just pays you. And it's really nice because it's really easy. Now, they will charge you for this. You always pay fees on eBay. You pay both like the listing fee and then the final value fee, just like it always was. The payment fee is probably that on top of it now too. You end up losing something like 20% to fees. 15 to 20%, I think, is kind of the all in for eBay. So that's significant. And so this is why like it's not a place to get the most money, but it is a place where you can be pretty much guaranteed a buyer, and you will generally have few to no problems with them. The previous problems in the past of like very, very fraudulent buyers, a lot of times for laptops and stuff, don't seem to be as common, especially if you're restricted to US only and like only accept their built-in payment system and stuff like that. So they make it very easy. And then like if you tell them like the dimensions and weight of your package before you even list the item, they will give you a shipping label. Like that you can say,
oh, interesting.
Like, because they're fully integrated now with the post office and everything. So like you don't even have to do that. Like all you have to do is print it out and tape it on the box and mail it, and you're done. So they've really reduced a lot of the old friction and a lot of the old steps you used to have to take to sell on eBay. It's now really quite easy to sell stuff there. The other option would be, as you mentioned, like Twitter, or if people email in saying, hey, can I buy your laptop, that kind of thing. The downside of that kind of sale is that you're limited in buyers. So if you're selling something that your audience might not want, or at a price they might not want to pay, it might not go anywhere. Whereas if you put it on eBay, it will sell. Like, no question. You put it on eBay, you make a 7-day auction, it is a week later, it will be out of your house. Like, no question, it will definitely sell. So I've been leaning more towards eBay for a lot of that kind of stuff recently. Anything I'm not trading in, I'll usually go to eBay, just because they have just made it so much easier. That being said, an even easier option, if you don't necessarily need the money from it, is to give it to a family member or friend who needs a new computer. Like, that's also a really good option. And so whenever I have someone in my life that could really benefit from it, I try to take that option. That's not the common case, unfortunately, because most people in my life don't care about computers as much as I do. So, so usually I end up selling. Or, like in the case of like selling a desktop, like most people in my life who need a computer don't want a desktop; they want a laptop. And so, like when we sold our iMacs a couple of years back, that one of them went to a family member, the other one went on eBay, and it was fine.
So, how do you price either for eBay or for like a Twitter sale, if you will?
So for eBay, it's super easy. You can go search for completed items and then filter that by sold items, and it will show you what this exact item has actually sold for in the last whatever days. eBay sold items is probably the best way to figure out what is this exact thing with this exact configuration actually worth. See what it sells for on eBay. It's like, well, they found buyers, so obviously that's about what it's worth. So pick whatever range you see there and make the starting bid something way low, so that way, and then set the buy it now price like maybe a little bit below that range. Because if yours is going for $100 less, $200 less, whatever, 10%, 15% less than the like value that people see by doing these kind of searches, it'll sell fast, and you will have less trouble like getting it sold. People will be more likely to hit the buy it now button, and then it's out of your house even sooner, and even with even less hassle. Again, it's one of those things, like if you're willing to give up like a few percent off the price and get a little bit lower price, you can have a faster, easier, more guaranteed sale. So that's, again, usually what I do is I hope people pick the buy it now. I most of my stuff that I sold recently never even went to auction. People just picked the buy it now thing because I priced it, 5 or 10% below what it seemed like it was worth. And it went, and that was it. If you're on Twitter doing that kind of sale, you basically do the same thing, but you can kind of go lower because you can account for the eBay fees not being charged to you in that medium. So, what I usually do if I'm selling on Twitter, I'll look at the eBay sold item price and I'll go maybe 20% lower than that because I know I'm not going to pay the 15% eBay fees. That works out pretty well if you can find a buyer there. But again, for more specialized stuff or for computers that you have literally spent the last few months telling all of your audience you shouldn't buy, maybe eBay's the better choice.
How do you deal with payment from like stuff that you sell on Twitter? Isn't that annoying to deal with?
Usually you can take advantage of the fact that people trust you. I know this sounds terrible, but you can use one of the options where it kind of works like cash to you. So the buyer kind of has no recourse after they send it to you. That only works if people trust you, obviously, because that's a good amount of trust to put in somebody.
It's not that they trust you. The main thing, I know this is not actionable advice for most people who aren't us, but the main feature that we all have is not like, oh, we're so trustworthy. It's that we have a public presence that people know about, so that if Marco screws someone out of a computer, it's a story. And so that the person, I mean, you might seem like, oh, but doesn't Marco have all the power? He's got the audience. This poor unknown person who's buying his computer doesn't have any power. But that's not true. They have the power of, now I have a story. Now Marco, this person you know from podcasts and developers, screwed me out of a computer. That's a story. Sites will pick that up. That will gain traction. And so the reason we have the ability to say, oh, just, you can trust me. Like, I think the mutual understanding is you can trust me because I know that I have a lot to lose by screwing you out of this thing. And so therefore I won't. And so that's the basis of our trust.
Yeah.
That makes sense. All right. I appreciate it. So I got to look at some eBay completed sales and see what these things should be priced for.
Although I do have to say I have some experience trying to exchange money with people, maybe not for selling computers and stuff, but like if you're not limited to US only, it can be surprisingly difficult to just like, let's find a way that we can both agree on and use to transfer money between someone in the UK and someone in the US. Oh, just use Apple Pay. Oh, apparently we don't have Apple Pay Cash in the UK. I'm like, why not? I don't know, because Apple. Well, what about PayPal? Well, I don't use PayPal. Do you use Venmo? Is that a thing there? And it's just, there's a million services, but if you have two sort of parties on equal footing and no one is particularly motivated, people don't want to sign up for a new payment thing.
No.
Like, well, I only use, Apple Pay Cash and Venmo. And the other person says, well, I only use PayPal and some other thing you've never heard of. And so now it's like a staring contest of like, well, so are you going to sign up for PayPal or am I going to sign up for Venmo? Or like, it's just, it's not super easy. And if anyone says cryptocurrency, I swear, just don't even.
Yeah, that's a hard no.
No, and this is again not only for payment reasons, but for shipping and customs/duty reasons. You don't want to ship outside the U.S. It's not worth the hassle. I'm sorry, people outside the U.S. You can buy from people in your countries to make things easier for you. As an individual seller, occasionally of my computer equipment, it is such a pain to ship to other countries because then you have to deal with customs, and that is a massive wild card, both for time to receive the item and for like unexpected charges either to you or to the buyer. And it's a complexity level that's not worth it when you are not a professional seller of goods. Like,
plus they don't have their own keyboard, right? Don't they have those terrible keyboards in the UK?
Yep,
yeah,
they sure do.
Like where the enter key is giant and all the punctuation's in the wrong place.
Mm-hmm.
And they can't program because their curly braces are all screwed up.